let's see. I haven't really looked into it, so I will also check if I can win. But I think you will be better. So, in the end, please, Jonathan, we met in Bilbao for a few years back when you were a speaker at QN Test.
So yeah, so I think the extended version of that real story was I went to the downstairs lobby bar, and yourself and the other co-founder of the company was sat there with this book on the bar. And I looked over, I went, Artificial Intelligence for Software Testing. What's that book like? And they went, we've not read it yet, but we're going to read it. I said, oh yeah, don't read it. I wrote it. You don't want to read that. But it's the only copy I've ever sold. One copy in Spain. So it was pure coincidence. And then this guy was responsible, as he was last night, for helping me go viral on TikTok. So I have the username TestTalk, and you showed me a few of the celebratory Swedish traditions.
We skipped that part, I think. Yeah, so you were here last year, and now we convinced you to come back again. So can you put your hands together for the fantastic Jonathan Wright?
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here. So I actually did this workshop. Well, I did a workshop here in the exact same building last year, right? So it feels like we're rebuilding. The difference was I had 4 of my guys with me, a quantum physicist who did half of the talking. So you'll be, anyone do quantum? Anyone quantum here? Anybody want to learn an entire course on quantum physics? One person. So yeah, so thankfully you didn't get that course. But last year we went through, and this is why he said to me, it needs to be hands-on. Because we were sat there, and he went to Oxford, he did his PhD in quantum, and then he did another PhD at Cambridge in quantum physics. And then he just sat here with this board writing equations. And I think about 3 people at the back fell asleep. I tried to doze off in the corner, and I was also thinking, maybe this is a little bit too much theory, and also too much for a start of the morning, right? Because we've not all had our coffee, which I will allow anyone, if they need to nip out for coffee, go for it. I'm going to say technology's not my friend, but I will try and use HDMI. Anyone know what HDMI stands for? Anyone? High definition, good one, but what's the MI? Media interface, yeah. You see, I was getting excited that I would be dealing with people that know what they're doing. And I'm going to try and do this. There we go. Wow. Technology. So, I lied to all of you. Apologies for that. I decided that I was going to do a completely different workshop to the one that was advertised. So, I wrote this yesterday, so no one's ever done this workshop before, which is okay, maybe, and maybe not okay. But at the same time, last week I was I was speaking in Star East in Orlando, and I was sat there with my friend who was here. What year was Tariq here? Tariq? I'm pointing at the moderator. He's got a picture of him on the wall.
Tariq.
What year was it?
Tariq King.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What year?
The other year.
The other year. Fantastic description. Yeah. So Tariq came in, and so I've known Tariq for a very long time. And he did his doctorates in 1995 on AI agents. So he wrote his paper, literally 25 years ago, on the technology we're going to talk about today, which is also feeling mainstream, right? In the sense of everyone's probably heard of, I'm hoping everyone's heard of Agentic as a word, right? And I will go into it a little bit more, but also I hope everyone's really excited about the idea of vibe testing, right? Yeah? Come on guys, we've got to, we're all quite excited about it, right? So Jason, is a good friend, Jason Arbin, wrote a book called How Google Tests. And also another friend, a guy called James Whittaker. Has anyone ever met or had the chance to see James Whittaker live? He's exceptional, right? And so James was at Microsoft for many years. I was at Microsoft for a short period, and Jason was at Google. And so he was running testing for the search engine. Everyone's used Google, right? We're not going to use it today, but we'll try. So last week I said to Jason, I said, look, I'm going to do a live vibe testing demo. And I went out to the audience and said, the people on the front table, there wasn't a front table. I said, just pick a website and we're going to show you how within 2 minutes we're going to run 1,000 tests and run every single possible permutation of that website. I did it live. Never worked with children, live animals, or do live demos. It worked, but at the same time, all of you, within probably, I'm hoping the first 5 minutes, will take away how to do vibe testing and forget my last 4 decades of what I've been doing in automation, because what you'll be able to do today will give you the tools, which is on those memory sticks, which everyone hopefully is starting to transfer across, all the tools you're going to need to be able to do everything, right? So just a quick one about the memory sticks, which is in the middle. Within the memory stick, there is hopefully 5 directories. One of them is a directory called Mac. One's called Windows. One's called Linux, which is good because we obviously got someone saying, I'm only running Linux because I'm so hardcore. And that is impressive, right? I am impressed with that. And I'm impressed that I actually downloaded the Linux versions of these things. But all my guys keep on teasing me because they use vibe coding, but they do it in Vim. So they refuse to use an IDE. They do everything at a terminal level. And I'm like, I can't do that. But that's cool, right? And then there's 2 other folders. One's called Models, which is very big. And the other one is called Build. And Build is a compiled version of the code as well. So you'll see a repos and a build folder, which has all the code you're ever going to need. And also I realized, if you are very techy, all my keys to all my OpenAI and everything else, and also some of the source code from my recent product. So apologies to my team for leaking that onto memory sticks. So everything you need is there. Now, I don't say just download all 68 gig onto your laptop because there's a lot of information. I'd take the install stuff that you need for your variant. I'd maybe transfer some of the models across. And then I'd also take all the repositories, right? And the reason was last year, everyone connected to the Wi-Fi and then everything was blocked. So OpenAI, Claude, Gemini, all of them were blocked, and everyone was like, oh, this is going to be a really short prompt engineering session, Jonathan. So I was like, it's okay, we can get past it. So today I've come slightly prepared. So I'm not saying you have to go and do all this now, and part of it is I'm going to kind of lead in gently into this session. And the other thing is, obviously, you probably can see, well, there's a camera there, and a camera there. I'm recording the session. All the slides and all the content is on that memory stick. You obviously got the video afterwards. All the repositories are on there. And then also we're going to use Miro as a collaboration board. So even when this workshop's finished, you can still all work together, right? So it's not like, oh, you've got to do this in 3 hours. You could just sit here and go, I'm loving it, and then do it in your own time. So I'm not trying to get everyone to say, you have to follow the working examples. We're going to do that together, right? I'm going to do that on my laptop. But I want to also give you the opportunity, if you've got a laptop and you want to get down and use this stuff, then you can. And we will all walk away with the fact where we're realizing, I'm never going to have to do automation again, which I'm glad about. And as you look on your laptop and go, yeah, did you ever run this through a virus scanner? No, I didn't. So there's no malware that I know of yet. So, great introduction from my good friend, who we've probably seen each other like 3 or 4 conferences this year, last year.
Yeah, everywhere I go, you pop up.
I pop up. It's like, so next week, I'm in Madrid for Expo QA running this the second time. So this is the world exclusive, by the way. You don't get any better than this, right? But I typically, last year I did over 100 conferences, 52 countries. Yes, I should have a day job. And I will get to that eventually. And I was really excited last year to get to do this course, to do workshops. The first time I'd done a workshop for 10 years, because when I was at Microsoft, all they wanted me to do is go and do workshops. And I realized it's a lot of work doing workshops, but also part of it is, it's not about me, it's about you guys walking away with it, with the excitement and the energy to say, I'm going to do this in my daily job, right? And I hope by the end of this, you feel that you've actually, you're excited to be able to actually take this away with you, right? And like I said, you don't need to scan any of these things, but actually, you were at Automation Store?
Is the question for me again?
Yeah, Vienna.
No, I wasn't there.
Okay.
Was anyone?
Anyone went to Automation Store? You were lucky. So I did the keynote at Automation Star, which is that photo in there, and my mentor was there. So when I started in the 90s, automation was fairly new, right? So I started using a product called XRunner, which then eventually became WinRunner, which then eventually became QTP, UFT, etc. And at the time, back in the 90s, I was lucky enough to have an opportunity to work with a lady called Dorothy Graham. And Dorothy was the first person who ever wrote any automation code back in 1974 for Bell Labs. So 1970, she wrote, when we're geeking out, this guy, actually, his first computer, he soldered the PCB together to build the computer. Actually, didn't lift physically the computer. Was that, you said 82, 81? 81. So Dorothy literally, was, and I spoiled it for the guys yesterday because I said to them, she went over to into DC to look at what the official first ever bug, right? So there's rumors around the world around the first bug recorded in history. And they say, oh, it's a bug on a punch card. And that's what happened, is they were putting a punch card in with a bug on the card and they found a bug. And so Dorothy went out to the Smithsonian in DC and debunked the fact that that's not actually what happened. That wasn't the first ever recorded test. And I will share it at the end. I feel like I'm holding on as much as I can to that story. But Dorothy wrote a book, which was my Bible back in the 90s, called Software Test Automation. And I was lucky enough to be able to do the follow-up book with her called Experiences in Test Automation, with a number of other friends like Alan Page, who wrote the book How Microsoft Tests. And so I've always been in automation. I see myself as an automation engineer in essence. However, I have, in theory, 4 decades of working in the field of testing, and I think I'm more excited about testing today than I probably was when I was in the 90s, because I think there's so much more opportunity. But I also think there's a lot more opportunity for people, right? I think it's now a human-led exercise, and I will go through it in a bit more detail because you probably can see over here me talking about the fact that the company I work for now, which is the original Hewlett and Packard company. So I was a professor in Stanford for a small period of time, and you've all heard of the story about the garage in Silicon Valley, right? On the left-hand side. So Bill and Dave was building what was test equipment back in 1939, which they actually sold to Disney when I was obviously in Disney last week. And they actually created the first stereo sound back in 1940 for Fantasia, the movie Fantasia. And over here on the right-hand side, in 1950 is just where I live now. So I'm kind of split between Santa Rosa in the United States and Oxford in the UK. And this is Bletchley Park. Now, we've all hopefully seen the movie as well, but I'm obviously going to talk a little bit about Turing today. And I did this talk about 8 years ago, before transformers, before large language models, before this was traditional machine learning, right? And so to me, there's a part of my heart that goes out to Alan and as the grandfather of AI, right? But also I'm going to kind of hopefully demystify things to say, well, we've heard a lot about the idea of AI, and now we think about AI as ChatGPT, but it's actually such a small segment, right? Actually, machine learning, and people like Tariq is are doing amazing things still in machine learning, right? So I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, which is why I wanted to kind of, in a way, kind of go a little bit further. Now, of course, all the way through this session, you can ask questions, right? We can stop, we can jump into areas, we can deep dive stuff, you can ask questions. However, there's no such thing as a silly question, right? So if you want to anonymously ask a question without putting your name, you can obviously just go to slido.com, and he's just about to write this on the wall. But his handwriting is like a child, so but all you need to do is just go to slido.com and then type TestCoast in as the code, or scan this, and you can post a question. So I'll be keeping an eye on Slido. So if you want to ask something, you can drop it in there, and it will dynamically come up. And what I'll make a promise to everyone now is that if we have questions there which we don't get the chance to go through, I will do a blog post to follow up where you can actually, I'll go into it in a little bit more detail. And again, that won't expire, so we can always still use that. So, Slido.com, my good friend at the back who didn't decide to use his childish handwriting is going to write it on the board.
Okay. I think that. Consider it done.
It's already done. It's the definition of done. Okay. So, I also said when I started that we're going to have access to Miro so we can all work together and share code, share slides, and do everything else. So actually, this link, which he's also going to write on the board, which is TestCoast Workshop, unfortunately it is camel case, which means that it's you can't use lowercase, uppercase. But that's the bit.ly link or the QR code to join the Miro board. And then as soon as you join the Miro board, you've got two choices really. You can use the web version, it's fine, or you can use the desktop version. And you'll be able to just drop stuff in there. There is stuff already in there. So I've put the slides in. I put some of the install processes. So the whole thing is I don't want to rush through these slides and you go, oh my gosh, he said something about installing cursor.com. How do I do the installation? He's gone past the slide. They're all there, right? So you can we're all going to go at different paces. So when you're installing on your Mac, your Windows, your iOS, there's the installation guide for each one of those. I say installation guide, I should just call it readme.txt, but fortunately maybe not. So we're going to add that one to the board list. So that's the Miro board. We've got the Miro board for collaboration. We've got the Slido stuff for being able to ask any questions. And we're going to break this session up into two sections. So, like I said, I apologize partially because I missold this talk. The first section is going to be around vibe testing, vibe coding. And that hopefully will give you all the tools and ability to leverage this capability. And I'm going to go into what vibe testing in a minute. And then lesson B, which I'm more than happy once you get through lesson A, you don't have to get to the point where you're deploying reasoning engines and AI agents and agentic frameworks, but you can by the end of this, right? So there's two separate lessons. I'm hoping, based on the 3 hours, is it 3 hours? Or 1 hour?
At 12, we will take lunch.
Everyone will leave. And do we have a break between them?
Yeah, we will have a break. So I didn't put that in the agenda because I think you will take it when it's...
so we'll break when we're doing after the first one, right?
Or when the energy has dropped to a too low level maybe. But you decide.
Okay, fantastic. So, Did anyone turn up to my workshop last year? One person. So last year, as you'll see from the next couple of photos, actually I realised there's so many photos of you in here. I apologise. I should pay your royalties, right? Last year was quite harsh. I know I joked about bringing my quantum guy and he just sitting there writing maths on the board, like a perfect mind kind of thing. But actually what we covered last year was this. And for some of them who know me already, I'm New Zealand originally, so by law you have to have a ring with every single slide. And I actually did a cameo in the Return of the Kings movie, so you can spot me. And I was also in a Marvel movie, which wasn't the Marvel movie that came out last week, which if you've not seen it, don't see it. It's not that good. And I will tell you which Marvel movie later. But these are the principles that we talked about, right? And we went quite deep. And thankfully, you'll be glad to know we're not covering any of these things today, right? But that's what we did last time. And also, this is me wearing the same outfit as I realised that I only have one jumper and a few hoodies. We also, don't stick your head in a thing. This does say I'm on a boat. I'm hoping it says on a boat, which is where we were last night, right?
It says, yep, we understand.
We're on a boat. But yeah, you will also learn don't stick your head in a cannon. It's probably the only real takeaway. But last year, this nice gentleman, good-looking gentleman here, decided to say, Jonathan, I will take you to an ice lake and we'll jump in. So I did the promotion of this event last year by going from the sauna and diving into the sea. And what you don't see here, minus Jason, who did reply, but was Michael Bolton had originally replied saying, why am I seeing naked people on my LinkedIn feed? And I was like, hadn't really thought about it at the time, but apparently this has gone quite viral, right? The football teams and stuff have been seeing this, saying, who are these good-looking guys here at the back? And, what are they doing? Diving in with this, thankfully, less beard this year, right? I think, thankfully, I had a shave. But this is what we're going to cover today. And, I was told the other day, you should not use any of these acronyms in the real world, right? But this is what we're going to cover. And some of this is like, I say, really exciting in the sense of I have a team of about 50 R&D engineers scattered around the world who are just building machine learning AI systems, right? So we've been, I guess, the last 15 years we've been building AI-infused products that in the testing space. But now, I'm going to go a little bit more detail into this stuff later, but, a lot of these new technologies that are emerging daily, weekly, are changing the landscape considerably. Whereas I would say 15 years ago, we introduced a product back in 2017 called Eggplant AI, which had AI in it. And every customer we went to see said, we don't want AI. And so we created an AI product, but 8 years ago, and nobody wanted to use it. Now, if I called my product AI now, it'd be selling off the shelves. Like this gentleman had mentioned yesterday that you started doing automation in the cloud. Was this in the noughties or?
2010 maybe.
2010. And he said, I typed in the word test automation into Google in cloud. What did you get?
Your name.
Ah! Sorry, I pay, that's my ad spend's already spent, right? But part of it is the technology which we're talking about is evolving at such a fast pace. But we will be going through most of these kind of capabilities today, and then we are going to test like it is 2014. So last night we were on the boat, and this is my quantum guy at the front, which I realised recently that I'm not actually allowed to take him out of the office anymore, out of his mum's basement. I'm literally told to put him back there. He's just got back from Japan. He's very sensitive. And the hotel that you put me in also has this thing on the wall called test. Now, I had to press that button, right? Because it says test. What do you think it does when you press the test button? Anybody?
Makes a sound?
Pardon?
Does it make a sound?
It didn't make a sound, but it cut all the electricity in the room. And so I rang reception. I said, there's this button in my room. It says test. I had to press it. And they were like, yeah, you just cut all the electricity off in your room. I was like, okay, can you turn it back on? And they were like, we'll send somebody up. So it was like 4 hours later, someone came back up. Didn't press that on and off because it's binary, 0 and 1, very, very efficient. But yeah, I had no power for the next 4 hours. So just because it says test, don't press it, is the lesson learned from last time. So, our good friend at the back is there. Is that a thumbs up? Or is that a Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy kind of symbol? What are you doing there?
Whatever.
Whatever.
Whatever you like.
So, good vibe testing. I'm quite excited about this, right? You know, in the sense of, has anyone heard of the term vibe coding, right? I didn't all drag you here you have to now go, oh, crap, what the hell is he going to give me? And yeah, he put his hand up eventually. So so vibe testing's gone, I say, viral in a way. So, and we'll cover this later on, but Microsoft, the CEO of Microsoft said 2 things last week which slightly upset me. The first one was the cloud and SaaS is dead. You know, this thing cloud, and I was on a plane and I was like, when I looked out the window and there was no data centers that we were flying into, right? So cloud is dead and SaaS, and I'm thinking, isn't Microsoft just a cloud vendor? Anyway, the stock went up. And the second thing he said was 30% of all the code now, production code at Microsoft, which is why I'm using an Apple today, is written by AI, but not with developers in the loop, just fully AI generated. I was like, yeah, that's the reason I need to buy Mac, right? Straight away. But 30% of the code is written now, production code is AI. And they've been using Vibe coding since 2022, right? So they've been using it for quite a long time. This isn't a new technology, they've been using it. And then, as we're going to cover later on today, is Vibe testing. Last week at the keynote at Star East, a good friend did a talk, and she stood up on stage and said, "Vibe testing, right? This is the next big thing we need to learn." And I kind of agree. I think it is really interesting. It's a really interesting session. I think you'll all take away a lot of value out of it. I'm not saying it's this end game, because I don't think it's sustainable. In 5 years' time, 10 years' time, we'll look back at this like I look back at the prompt engineering session I ran last year, and we all stood up, myself, Tariq, Jason, we all sat on a panel and said, "I'm really sorry, we've been teaching people prompt engineering, but you don't need it. You need to know it, because we're past that. It's evolved past prompt engineering." So this idea of vibe coding, vibe testing, I think is also going to disappear in 5 years' time. But for the next 2 years, wherever you look, instead of just people adding the word AI to their talks, everyone's going to be talking about vibe testing. There's Robert. He's having a great time. So we're going to do a few things. The first one I did say, which is why everyone was like, "Oh my Lady Gaga, why on earth did someone have a minimum specification for joining this session?" But I would like to allow everybody to be able to get involved. It doesn't matter if you've got a mobile phone or you are using Linux. Inclusivity is my thing here. So it doesn't matter what version, what kind of setup you've got. We're going to have a solution where you can work through the examples. It doesn't. I'm not, I'm not naming and shaming if you didn't bring a device, right? But also, as you probably already are expecting by the fact that on the left-hand side there's some very bad use of things. Is last week I was in Galaxy's Edge for May the 4th be with you, right? So I'm not saying I'm a die-hard Star Wars person, but I have to apologize if all my references are either linked to Star Wars, Star Trek, or, as we talked about a little bit, yes, Douglas Adams' Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. So if you don't get the references, don't worry, but we'll go through it. And so we also talked outside about the fact that most phones these days, which my phone keeps on ringing, have a NPU. And an NPU is a neural processing unit. So I know it's going to be a shocker, but the reason why the NPU is designed is to be able to run the compute or the AI at the edge. So at the moment, when the CEO of Microsoft says the cloud's dead, what they're really saying is actually there's enough power here to be able to run all of the stuff we're talking about completely offline. So the neural processing unit on here, which is about 1 trillion, they call it TOPS or T something, whatever it is about, in essence, enough to run an offline model to do either do that or, perfectly timed by the way, or to be able to do computer vision, machine learning at the device, right? And I'm not saying go and buy an Apple device. You can also, other ones are available in different flavors. But most devices now will have some kind of neural processing unit. So I worked at Intel for a small period of time with my friend Ray Arel, who founded the Agile Alliance. And all the Intel chips that you can buy now, anything that came out this year, will have an NPU, a dedicated neural processing unit. If you're lucky enough to have a Mac, Macs have been using neural processing NPUs for quite a long time, which is why they've now been added to the Jedi Master status, because they use unified memory, which means the memory space required. So you probably all have heard of DeepMind. DeepMind, DeepSeek. Which one's the large language? Seek. It's a good job somebody else is here who knows about it. So DeepSeek is not very good, by the way. But what it did was prove that you don't need a large amount of memory. And so the Chinese, unfortunately, have been restricted by the US to be able to use what is called T100 cards, which are large cards to do machine learning, because they don't want them to advance as fast. And why DeepSeek was so revolutionary is they're saying, well, actually, you don't need to have huge hardware to run this stuff. And this is why we lost $1.2 trillion off the US stock exchange when DeepSeek launched their product, because there was a fear that actually you don't need a crypto server farm to run this kind of technology. You can run it here on your phone. And this is really what they're talking about when they're talking about, actually the future isn't about cloud, it's about running everything on your local machine because it has less of a footprint, right? So we're going to go through, and like I said, for each section, whether or not you're talking about you're a Padawan, a youngling, or a Jedi Master, I'm going to go through each one of these ways of how you can set this up. But like I said, in a way, it doesn't matter, because if you get onto Miro, you can look at these instructions in a bit more detail. I don't want to go through it too much. But I'm guessing, has everyone got a ChatGPT account? Who pays for a ChatGPT account? That's what I'm really interested in. 1, 2,
My
3.
company does.
4. So I'm going to obviously backtrack really quickly about ChatGPT. But because I came here last year, and like I said, every large language model was banned off the local university thing. I have my I say myself, but I have Jonathan.ai, which is a domain, so www.jonathan.ai, which today is all you need, right? So if you just got your mobile phone, you decide, you know what, Jonathan, I'm not going to copy your virus-ridden memory stick. You can do everything we talk about today in both courses using just this domain, right? So you go on it, and this is running a Gemini variant, so it will be able to generate the code, you'll be able to do everything you need, and you'll be able to use it on your phone, right? So in theory, you don't need to set up ChatGPT, you don't need an account, you don't need an API key. If you have one, great. Would I recommend paying for a ChatGPT account? The answer is no. I would spend $20, or how many crowns is that?
About 200.
200 crown, one time, not per month, one time, just to buy API credits for Anthropic. That would be all I would say. So if you ever want to put your money in your pocket, $20, don't sign up for Claude. I love Claude, but all you need to do to be the best AI engineer in the entire world is pay 200 crown for an API key. So that you can do yourself later on with your credit card, or you can give me your credit card, and I can set it up for you, right? I'm that nice today, right? But like I said, you don't need to do this, but I would highly recommend it, and obviously you know because you've been using this and we were talking about it. Was we doing tequila last night? Yes. Okay, that's why I feel like I do. So I'm going to show you this later on and show that the fact that actually all that course that I did last year was made redundant by actually using this tool. So if you want to be the best prompt engineer on the planet, you just need to pay 200 crown. That's it. Done. Problem solved. Everyone's happy. We've won. Third one. This is when we start getting excited, right? How many people here have got Cursor? One? Yes. That means we can all install it on our laptops. Or not on your phone. So I thought Cursor was that thing that you click on the screen, but if you go to cursor.com, you can download Cursor, which is also on the memory stick, so you don't need to go on the internet. And it will generate every single piece of code you need, and that's the alarm to say proximity. I feel like I'm in the Matrix, but I might not be in the Matrix. So yeah, cursor.com is all you're ever going to need for code, vibe coding, right? It literally will write all the code for you and do all the testing. So, and it's free. It's like, oh my God, can it get any better than this, Jonathan? You've just said to me, all I need to do is spend $20 to be the best prompt engineer in the world, and then you can use Cursor. Don't use Cursor too much. Honestly, don't use it too much is the thing we're going to talk about later on. And then finally, for those people who said, Jonathan, why on earth did you give me 68 gig on a memory stick? And I had originally put it on floppy disks, but I couldn't carry them because their suitcase was full. LM Studio, anyone use LM Studio? Don't know. That's the final piece of the puzzle. So LM Studio, again, free, and it means you can run any model offline. It doesn't matter what your laptop is, it doesn't matter how much memory you've got on your laptop, it doesn't matter how old your processor is. You can run everything completely offline. So I would recommend, again, lmstudio.ai, completely free. And the models that you need and the install are on the disk. And we're going to go through this in a minute. Why, Jonathan, why not use ChatGPT? And I'm going to go through numerous reasons why not to use ChatGPT. And then I'm going to explain the advantages, because by the end of it, you could, in theory, use this to power all your agentic stuff as well. So it's really quite exciting. I say exciting, there's only so much excitement you can do in one day, right? So, what on earth is vibe testing, Jonathan? So, like a very good person, I typed it into ChatGPT. Thankfully, you can't read it 'cause it's too small. But it says, it's vibration testing. This is a reason you don't use ChatGPT, right? So vibe testing is shorthand for vibration testing, commonly used in aerospace, automotive, electronic industry. So you at Volvo, right? You do vibe testing? We talked about it a little bit too much last night. And so this is vibe testing, right? Is you literally put the device under test, and it just shakes it. This isn't, by the way, what we're doing, because if I did that and shake it, I'd probably feel quite sick. But I love the concept of device under test, because obviously I worked for the original Dave and Bill, who was building hardware, which the first hardware they built was in a toaster. So they built the box, the PCB, in the toaster, because they weren't metalsmiths. But I think there's no software without hardware, right? You know, it kind of feels like we don't believe in this physical stuff, this kind of real world hardware. We think of software as this thing which we test, and many times I kind of go to people and say, so you're a software tester? Yeah, you're not a tester. And so I give them something like an ECU from a car or something. I'm like, how would you test this? And they're like, well, where's the interface? I'm like, no, you just use the cam, right? You just send it messages. What? And you're like, well, actually, it's all hardware, right? You can't run software without hardware. And then most importantly, the most valuable thing you're going to take away is do not use ChatGPT for anything. Sorry, maybe I did that in all uppercase. Anything work related anyway. So I promised you a slide, so I put it in. So we do vibration testing. So one of our products, it was the most depressing thing ever joining a company that is a hardware company, because they said, Jonathan, you're okay at speaking at conferences. I said, yeah, no problems. And they said, okay, so you're going to, next week, we need you in San Diego to do a microwave conference. I said, no worries. At university, I microwaved all my food. And they literally turned around and went, did we hire the wrong person? And then the most depressing part of this is, I mentioned Carl, my quantum physics guys. So last year, you remember this story, is why were microwaves invented? What was the purpose of microwaves?
You put me on the spot here. Please tell us.
Can't bounce off him for anything. Last time we were a perfect duo, like we were just harmonizing. So does anyone know why a microwave was invented? Anybody?
I think to unfreeze the hamster.
Exactly. Oh my God, I'm so happy that you've got that. So it was done so you could resurrect animals, resurrect people. So if you have a hamster, anyone got a hamster? Anybody want a hamster? So I've got 3 at home and I'm not getting rid of him. You take hamster, let's call it, my first hamster was called Softy, because he was really soft, and I was like 5. You take a hamster, you put hamster in freezer, the freezer over here, close the door. Don't do this if you can do it. Close the door, 3 days later, go back to freezer, open freezer, take hamster out, put hamster in microwave. What happens? Well, the hamster comes back to life, and the hamster continues to live and also reproduce with no side effects. What? Have you frozen someone and brought them back to life? Well, that's what microwave technology was, and unfortunately you will Google it afterwards and go, it was designed because they wanted to freeze people, like Walt Disney and whoever else, Michael Jackson, whoever else wants to get frozen, and bring them back. The problem is, you can't use this technology on humans because they can't get rid of the crystals quick enough. So it works with hamsters because they're small, but it doesn't work with humans, which is why there's a whole stack of frozen dead dudes around, right? But that's what microwaves are for. And then, of course, the technology that they used then went into communications, and then eventually into fast food, right? But this is what we do. This is literally our slide. So I go into customers and say, "What do you want? I'm here." And they go, "I don't know. Maybe. What do you want? A Volvo. Which ones of these ones would you buy? And also, can you pass me bank card details?" This is my own marketing slide, by the way. But
UAV modeling.
yeah, okay. So the modeling stuff
Yeah.
is really useful. So we spend most of our times doing something called digital twins, which we'll talk about later on, to do, in essence, model the prototype behavior physics-based simulation before you ever create the physical thing. So we talked about welding, and I was like, I thought welding was that, what was it flash dance? Was it flash dance? The one with, yeah, flash dance. That's the only thing I think about when you think about welding. But actually we do testing on welding techniques for structural integrity, and they do that using modeling. I wouldn't class this as testing, but we're the largest Silicon Valley testing company on the planet since 1940, right? But most of you will be like, I don't want computational fluid dynamics, Jonathan. So thankfully, that isn't what vibe testing is. So you're all sat there going, thank God, Jonathan, you finally get there, right? And so this is last week, and I'm wearing the exact same shirt. I only have one shirt and one jumper. That's all I'm allowed to wear. And so Melissa did the opening keynote at Star East, and she was told the night before that she was going to do the keynote. So the lady from Disney was supposed to do it, and then Disney said, no, we can't do it because there's IP sensitive information on the slides. And then Melissa gets a message at 11 p.m. that night saying, you're on stage tomorrow for the keynote, what are you going to talk about? And so she did this talk, a fantastic talk, and the link's there, on vibe coding. And she did the same demo that I did at Star East 2, all thanks to Jason. So if you've not met Jason or you never had the opportunity to meet Jason, that's somebody you should actually Google, because I love Jason. I've realized when I say that, maybe I love him too much, right? There's a certain amount, but like our bromance that we're having. Jason, to me, is probably one of the legendary automation testers this generation's ever seen. And this is last year, this is back in November, and you keep on saying to yourself, Jonathan, is all what you're doing is spending your time at Disney? Because it seems to be Disney's everywhere. So this is Star West. He did the opening keynote at Star West. And what he's showing me, which is what we're all going to be doing in 20 minutes, so don't worry, you will get your hands dirty at some point in time, is he was showing me that the first person in Malaysia was running an AI agent on his laptop whilst we're both sat having coffee in the morning. He was like, look, someone's using my platform, doing vibe testing, and finding all these issues, and it's running on my laptop. There was no cloud. Running on my laptop, and I was like, okay, that's pretty cool, right? So I want to give him the credit that actually the idea, the concept behind vibe testing, I think it's a bit longer, right? But I think Jason definitely had a hand in help building it. And of course, Tariq. So Tariq was part of Test.ai, which is one of the reasons I think we probably invited him. Legendary in the AI space, and Tariq joined Test.ai with Jason, and that company then, it was a Google company, went back to Google. Jason, which he sent me a message this morning, has now created a platform called Testers. So he's added the ERS, which I learned yesterday is island. Is it island? Test island?
Tester, yeah. Tester.
So there's an island in Sweden called Test. The island's actually named Test, and it's Tester.
Tester.
Tester is the test island. So last week, these horrible people, like Joe, anyone? Joe Colantonio? Well, Scott Moore and a few other people. So we did this session, panel discussion. I do have another shirt. You've not seen this shirt before, have you, right? I'm gonna have to watch The Matrix again. I love that. It's absolutely, it's like the proximity thing when they're coming after you. So, Jana, who is quite a well-known tester, you need to invite her next year. Yes?
We will try.
Try?
Yeah.
She just got another pony, so you might have to buy her a pony.
Wow.
We did a live stream last week, which is this live stream. You can watch it if you really wanted to. Which is, what are the skills that testers need today to deal with AI? And of course, critical thinking was on the list, but also communication. And unfortunately not here today, but we were talking about last night on the boat, is that I think communication is an absolutely critical skill going forwards, right? Very much like the mentality around critical thinking, and we'll demonstrate that today a little bit. But I think partly people think, which I've never agreed with, unfortunately, is people maybe 10 years ago said, learn to code, learn Python, be a developer. And I kind of said, I've been in automation for 4 decades. I see the value of coding, but I would say the role of making yourself invaluable in the future is actually all about knowing your industry, knowing your personal experience, and your ability to communicate well and be, a stakeholder of, an ambassador for quality, right? Which is the speech that they did yesterday at TestCoast, is that actually testers are going to be more demand than any other industry, right? And we'll talk a little bit about that later on. There's a dark side to everything, right? And it's not just because I like Star Wars, but when I was flying over here, and you can see this based on my bad reposting, vibe coding isn't new. It's been going since 2020. Originally GitHub Copilot kind of came out, and then something called stable code was the model that was very powerful to be able to create code. But I'm already seeing this with my guys who are using Vim and Copilot. Is they're like, I love the idea that it's gonna generate me code, but in actual fact, I think it's not a sustainable engineering practice, right? Because you need the muscles to think of problem solving and everything else. That actually the idea of, I don't need to test because the system's going to test for me, that's not the end goal, right? And it's not a sustainable goal. Like I said, I genuinely believe this is probably only five years of life in this. Like software developer and test is not a thing anymore, or it shouldn't be a thing. I don't think vibe testing will be a thing going forwards, because actually I think it's irrelevant. It's an exciting technology that's here. And then I sat down with Diego, and I'll mention Diego a few times. So Diego is the lead analyst for Forrester, and he wrote a paper back in 2019, which is slightly pre-GPT days, Transformers 2017, 2022, GitHub Copilot, and he talked about Turing bots, Alan Turing, so he called them Turing bots, and he said, I think we can improve productivity by 20% if we use these tools. Now, I think hopefully everyone in their organization's already heard of GitHub, right? And most people have already allowed to use it in their organization, and developers are raving at the idea that they can use this 20% productivity. And that's the whole thing. When people think about AI, I think about, and this is what I talked about last year, I think about helping support you. No one's going to be replaced by AI, but you're going to be replaced with other people using AI tools because they're able to do things quicker, right? But we already saw the downside that actually they said 20% productivity, but they saw a 300% decrease in code quality just by using this approach, which is why I'm considerably concerned about this, which is saying 30% of all the code is just generated by AI. Doesn't follow any secure coding practices. It's not production level code, and I'm not allowed to use the word CrowdStrike anymore, thankfully, because it's a year later. But I think we've all realised that the damage potentially software can do in the real world if it goes wrong, when it goes wrong, right? And that's fine if it's a mobile app and it's a retail website, fine. But if it's a health system connecting someone to an ECU or some other kind of critical system, that just can't happen, right? And we joked about it last night, but I still kind of slightly worry about this in the sense of, I remember about 10 years ago sitting down with Dan North, and Dan created BDD. So he created, if you remember ThoughtWorks, he created something called JBehave, which was the first behavior-driven development tool. He was a developer. He still is a developer. And I was kind of partially not blindsided, but I loved Goico's specification by example. Elizabeth, who did acceptance test-driven development, I really liked the idea. But like I was teasing yesterday, is like the concept of test-driven development is you write the test first, and then you write the code to make the test pass. Which got me into a lot of trouble last week because I was saying to Jenna, I was like, well, have you ever seen this really happen, right? And 4 decades in, I've seen a few companies that have written tests before they write code, but the majority of people don't really do this. And so the reason why I'm saying this is if you think of this concept of AI can write code, we explored it a little bit with the idea that there's a requirement or a reason why you're writing the code in the first. There's a prompt. Let's say it's a prompt for a second. So I'm saying, write me a mobile app. Should I be asking it to write me a mobile app, or should I be defining a test saying, I need a mobile app, it needs to be a healthcare app, it needs to connect to my watch to look at my time series data to say if I'm having an issue, and then get the AI to make the test pass? Is that what we should be doing? And I think most people are saying to me, no, that's not the answer, Jonathan. But I want to put that into that thought process, because the excitement around AI and AI productivity leads to this. Yesterday or the day before, was it yesterday or the day before? Everyone's seen this article? 7,000 people let go from Microsoft. Someone needs to work on their PowerPoint skills. So 7,000 people will let go, and what you would have seen if I didn't suddenly have 2 slides over it, so I'm going to just stop that for a second and delete that. Oh, sorry, pull that back. This was on my feed yesterday, and my friend Donna, who's the chief troublemaker of Microsoft, James Whittaker's, who wrote the book with Jason as protege, this was all over the place about the fact that actually the 7,000 jobs, they've gone because of AI. And I don't think that's the truth, right? I don't genuinely believe that those people have been replaced. And obviously she turned around and said, no, that's not the truth, Jonathan. That's, these aren't being replaced by AI. However, I'm going to partially put out the thought process is there is a reckoning coming, right? There's an AI workforce replacement wave. And you've all heard of Stargate, right? Stargate? The Trump's announcement that they're going to build the biggest server farms on the planet, which they've already been building for 2 years in Texas, there's a reckoning coming in where they want to remove workforce and replace them with AI. This is what agentic AI is, right? It's targeting replacing people. And I don't really believe in that. I believe the opposite side, which is actually humans are the most important thing of this. And that's why now we're going to get a little bit more serious and do some hands-on stuff, is why humans are the most important thing. And we all agree. We're all genuinely agreeing that actually testers now in this new era, and you can partially see Tariq there, he's on a wall apparently, and you can also notice there that I'm wearing a cape. I didn't wear a cape today, and then Jason at the end. But we all agree that actually AI is actually about testers being better at their job and giving them superpowers, which is what my talk was last year. So, the first example, which is, doesn't matter who you are or where you're going through, we're just going to use, in essence, your favorite large language model. And I don't mind which large language model you use, right? You know, I'm going to give this quick example, but of course, if I asked Grok, which is an awful large language model, by the way, and it's not because I'm getting into a lot of trouble about Elon. If you ask Grok, who the hell is this Jonathan guy, like you Googled, it's pretty good, right? It brings up what I would say is a search engine of information. Equally, which you're probably not going to be able to hear because my speaker's on loud.
Hi, I'm Gemini.
you
We're
ask
about to go
Gemini-
live, where you can explore complex topics or...
Okay. Well, I never use Gemini, by the way. Which is why
Brilliant.
it says,
Let's get started.
Use the
Here's one of the
microphone.
voices I... You can always change my voice in settings later. All right, ready when you are.
So I ask it, who's Jonathan Wright? And you can tell I'm on a plane, by the way. 'Cause that
Jonathan Wright is a well-known expert in the field of AI and software testing. He's got a lot of experience working with AI systems, and he's really passionate about using AI to improve how we test software. He's involved in a bunch of different projects, including helping out with the ISO standards for AI testing.
Thank you. Or not thank you, as what we would normally say. So you can use a large language model. And like I said, last year I would have sat down with you and said, let's all learn how to do effective prompt engineering, right? But today, slightly different, is, like I said, I want to explore the idea and hopefully pull you away from using ChatGPT and move you on to something else. And so I mentioned earlier on, if you've just got a phone, you can use Jonathan.ai, and you unfortunately get me, and don't talk to my AI for too long because it's slightly worrying, because I turned the temperature really high and I added on a personality which isn't the greatest personality. It does represent my own personal personality. So I gave it all my articles and said, pretend you're me. So sometimes it takes like 30 minutes before it actually gives you any code and gets your hands on, right? But it is a little bit slow at best of times, right? But what's under the hood is a Gemini license that I pay for a Gemini Pro. So you could probably guess I'm not the biggest Google fan in the world, and I would not say Gemini is the best platform, right? Everyone has their favorites. Children, pets, whatever it might be, right? Gemini is considerably good at code generation. It's very good at, Gemini Pro is probably the best at code generation, which is why I've set it to Gemini on this particular day. Typically I'd use Anthropic or something else behind the scenes, but at the moment it's using Gemini. But the great thing about this AI is you'll realize quickly that it doesn't have access to any information, because I don't like the idea of a large language model just being the internet, because the internet is not a good source of information, right? It used to be, but it isn't anymore. And I did a talk with Steve Wozniak, and I said to Steve, I said, you know, what's one of your biggest regrets? And he said it was the internet. You know, when he started, the internet was an idea to collaborate, academia, really about human collaboration to move the world forwards. I'm not sure I could say the same thing today, right? And then, so I think part of it is you don't want it to know the internet. You want it to be a large language model, right? You want to be able to use it for what its absolute purpose is, which is what I would class as narrow AI. So everyone always talks about general artificial intelligence and maybe super artificial intelligence. But machine learning and AI are very good at narrow tasks, very good at doing one thing very consistently. But you have to focus, you have to, and this is why I ended up sitting next to you yesterday. As soon as he said the word fine tuning, I got really excited. I was like, okay, I need to join this conversation. But I like the idea of being very specific about what the output is. I don't want a generic output, I don't want the internet. If I wanted the internet, I'd use Google, right? But what also is interesting about this, and this is what we covered last year, is it's using RAG architecture. It's using retrieval augmented generation to take all its information. So it won't tell you what the country of Paris is. It will only tell you information that I've specifically fed into it for this workshop. And so it knows two things. It knows testing, and it knows NOP commerce, because that's the demo app that I decided we're going to use. And so it knows ISTQB, it knows the ISO standards, it knows every testing term on the planet. And this is really important, because if you ask AI, what's emotional testing? It makes something up. It sounds fantastic, but it makes something up about emotional testing being a state which the tester is in when they test an application. I could say emotional testing, that sounds right, and it feels right when I read it. If you ask Jonathan.ai what emotional testing is, it will tell you the ISO 29119 Part 3 definition of emotional testing and tell you how to apply it. And it's nothing to do with emotions, right? So part of it is, large language models are very good at tricking us. And you know what Paul Gerard, who's going to do the opening keynote, he was going to say, it's an imposter. It's very good at fooling people. The reason why everyone's so excited with large language models is natural language processing and natural language generation got to a point in 2017, 2019 with transformers that people would read the response and believe it was a real response. And what I'm trying to decouple from everyone here today is to say, well, actually, that's not a good thing. The same thing as I said to a few people last night is, you should never speak to a large language model in English, ever. You should always speak to it in your native language, because a large language model is much better in every other language but English. So we've got Japanese customers, we've got Chinese customers, we've got Swedish customers, you know, Volvo. They all speak to it in their own language and feed information into it in their own language, and it performs considerably better on all the RAGA benchmarks and everything in their natural language than it does English. English is not a very good language to use for a prompt, right? So hopefully that will take that away today. And by the way, I'm not going to be writing anything in Klingon like I did last time. So Klingon is a maths-based language, so it's actually the right language to use. There's only a few people that can speak. Anyone speak Klingon? Yeah, we'll test that on later. So Jonathan, you just keep on saying to me this stuff. You keep on saying, don't use ChatGPT, install LM Studio, you know, take everything offline, focus it down to my industry, my domain, make it specific, make it super focused, and don't use this thing that, it was not Bill Gates anymore, but the CEO of Microsoft said last week, don't use the cloud, disconnect your machine from the internet. That's the thing I would always say, just disconnect your machine. But I'm using LM Studio here, and what you might say is go, well, Jonathan, I don't have, well, actually I've got a 5090 now, but I don't have an expensive gaming graphics card. So what I would say is go back to work and say, look, Jonathan told me I need to get a gigantic Alienware with 128 gig of memory and the latest GPU for work. And they'll be like, okay. Finally, you can justify it, and then just spend all your time playing Minecraft, right? You know, you don't need to actually do any work. But unfortunately, yes, you can see here I've got 12 gig of memory, and that is pretty much the minimum amount of VRAM you need, right, to get by these days. So I'm not saying go off and buy a new laptop. I'm not saying you should go and expense it. No, I am saying you need to go and buy a new laptop, right? Which is why that minimum requirement drops in, right? But also, you don't want to use ChatGPT, because out of all of these ones, when I asked the question, when's Jonathan speaking at this AI event in Athens? When I asked ChatGPT, which is a glorified search engine, it actually then said, oh, here's a post where I'm not jumping into a lake. Look, it actually happens. I don't always jump into a lake when I'm doing my promotion videos. But what you'll see over here is you can see there's little links attached to the thing. That only came through in 4.0. And so I was on a call with Sam probably a few months back, and Sam said, oh, 90% of the content that we trained the model on was illegal content. He openly says this, right? Don't join Zoom calls with it. Mainly because I don't like Zoom. Actually, unfortunately, Skype dies this month. Everyone know about this? It's literally end of life. So you can't use Skype anymore. It's a hard thing to do. It's called Microsoft Teams, by the way, but Skype is dead. Long live Skype. But GPT was and still is content that shouldn't be on the internet, right? And only recently they've started adding these links to where the information came from. But it's using the search engine technologies for this, right? So this large language models will always tell you where the information came from. So if you load LM Studio and you give it a RAG retrieval set, and we'll go into how Microsoft does this in a minute, it will tell you exactly where it got the information as part of that transformation. And it will always tell you, because you have to know where the information comes from, because otherwise emotional testing could just be made up. So when you speak to Jonathan.ai, it will tell you, I found this in the ISTQB thing on page 407, paragraph 3, and this is the definition. It'll tell you where it is. Large language models are designed to tell you where the source came from. And that's why we want to use things offline, right? So anyway, we were supposed to be doing stuff. So where should you do this prompt? Where would, well, when you get home or you get to work, where would you send this prompt to? Would you send it to the offline version? Would you send it to Gemini? Would you send it to Jonathan.ai? Going forwards, where would you ask this prompt? Anybody? Where? Someone nearly had that answer. After what I've just said, where do you think the best place is to ask it a question? About Volvo engine system 407-2 Mark III, where should you ask that question? At Volvo. Where do you ask that question at the moment? About that item?
Too little knowledge about the different...
And that's the point, is a large language model does not know the Volvo engine specification of a 3 Series truck with... It just doesn't have that information. It doesn't know the information. So the whole point is Volvo, which I do, I work with Volvo in India, they use the platform that we built to ask exactly that question. So they say on the Mark II, whatever, in a European specification, with this particular braking technology, what's the tolerance of this component on this? And they get the answer, which shows them the specification of the document internally, stored on local document repositories, and it says, here's the information. And that's what a large language model should do, right? That's how Volvo and everyone should use these tools. They should be telling you about information that's inside of your organization, which is IP sensitive, proprietary, and it shouldn't make stuff up, right? And that's the first takeaway from this area, is that actually the stuff that I tried to teach last year is trying to say, don't use ChatGPT, don't use Gemini, don't use Claude, don't use anything. And that's why everyone got so excited about generative AI, because they realized actually we're only just scraping the surface. But as Gemini said, I do a lot of work with the European Union for the AI Act. So the AI Act came into force on the 4th of February this year for AI literacy. And AI literacy was to say every organization has a responsibility to enable their staff to know all of the stuff that you just heard, right? Everyone should know this. And so that's what the 2nd of February did. Later this year, October, AI liability comes into force for the European AI Act. And the European AI Act liability clause says, which is Google's old motto until they decided that maybe do no evil was not a good marketing strategy, is it says you should not be using AI maliciously. You shouldn't be doing it to discriminate against people, to have bias, to do things like, if I'm going to give you a car loan, I should not be using PII information, I shouldn't be using GDPR information, AI should not do any evil. And the fines are 6% of your turnover, or 400 million. Now you'd say to yourself, well, we ignored GDPR, it was fine. Nobody cares about sharing anyone's personal data. I have your credit card details. No, but this is serious, because actually AI, people are rushed to install an AI and do whatever they want with it, but they don't realize that actually it can have a massive impact. If you build a system with AI in it. Do you have any AI systems?
Yeah.
We'll go into it a little bit later, detail. But I think part of it is the question which I was asking, which is when Jonathan's talk, how could you just use Google? Now obviously don't use Google. Use Bing. Everyone use Bing? Anyone use Ask Jeeves? No, that's not one. But yeah, I would use Bing over Google, right? And so does Jason, by the way, and he is ex-Google. So yeah, Bing, just bing.com. We're not going to learn chain prompting. Don't use ChatGPT for anything. Very, very quick thing. Use Microsoft Bing. I'm not saying that because I used to work at Microsoft. I'm just saying Bing's the way forwards. So this one statement from last week hurt me quite hard, right? So my youngest is 18 and she wants to become a computer hardware engineer. Is what she wants to do when she grows up. And she's doing her exams next week. So I saw this article and I was like, oh, she's never going to be as smart as an AI. And I just thought to myself, this is quite a bit of a weird thing, right? I'm just about to send her off to university to do a 3 or 4 year engineering course. Which I'm going to tell her on Monday, is we sat eating dinner 2 days ago and she said, I don't think I'm going to go to university because there's AI. Like, it doesn't matter how much information I learn, I'm never going to be as smart as AI. That's what you've told me, Dad. I'm like, okay, maybe I wasn't clear enough that actually that's not why you go to university. And it's not also the reason to get loads of debt. Is the reason why you'll not be as smart as an AI is because an AI is very good at just being a large language model or doing something else, right? It's very good at narrow tasks. As a human, you're going to be incredibly talented to use your skills. And I don't know if anyone's, so my TED talk, if you go to TED.com and type in my name, but for everyone else, has anyone ever seen the very well-known professor who does Why Schools Are Killing Creativity? And if you've not watched the TED talk, I'd recommend it, right? And within that talk, he goes into the idea that schools have been around for a very long time. Schools are designed to become an engineer or do something else, right? But I don't know where technology is going to be in 5 years. So once she finishes university, will they be a software developer role? Will there be software developers? I don't know. I literally can't predict what the future is, but I know that the skills that she has, communication skills, her ability to problem solve and think, are going to be valuable in the future, whatever that future is. And so this post a week ago, Amanda wrote, they're now saying, which is unfortunate because obviously I was speaking this last year, is that actually AI is widening the gap between junior resources and senior resources, not closing it. So I was sat doing the keynote going, you know, let's give all testers superpowers, right? Let's be superheroes, right? Like my Marvel movie. No, is actually, it's pushing the gap away because people who've been in healthcare and aerospace and car, you know, automotive industries for 10 years, they look at an output and go, that's wrong. This is incorrect. And they quickly have the skills to realize that they are able to use AI very productively. The junior resources, so I just, you know, next week I'm in Madrid. I've hired 12 new PhD students out of Madrid University, right? Who are going to be incredible, right? But I'm not sure I can give them this technology and say, you're going to be X% more efficient, because they don't know vibration testing and welding techniques and all this stuff. They know they've got a doctorates in machine learning. They don't have any domain expertise. So why I'm saying this is I genuinely believe that your skills and your knowledge is what's going to make you different going forwards. And so again, you know, part of this is trying to say that whole idea of make it until you fake it, or whatever you want, imposter syndrome, which seems to be a thing, and a few other things, is that don't think AI is going to be the solution to the problems, because I don't think it is. I think it's just a tool. Okay, I am going to get people to write some stuff at some point in time. So, hail to the king, baby, which is what we talked about yesterday. Tariq, he's on the wall next to me, is he?
In the office, yes.
Yes, I hope so. I'll find out. So last year, if you decided to do the entire workshop, I don't think it was a day, was it? It was half a day, right?
It did a half day.
Half a day.
Like this.
All you would have learned from my previous session was this, which is Markdown, right? This is the perfect prompt, right? And I completely, hats off, I give this to Tariq, is when he showed me how he does prompting, I realized that I suck, right? And that I can't write beautiful, well-structured prompts that are incredibly efficient. However, because we said we were going to do some hands-on stuff, let's take on Tariq for a second, right? So I'm going to use a browser because everyone uses Microsoft Edge, right? All my demos are in Microsoft Edge, right? So, okay. And you'll quickly see that I'm using Microsoft Bing. And you're also going to see, well, you would have seen a second ago, the news articles are about Trump. So if I just go to console, we'll zoom in, don't worry. Macs, I don't know where Macs are. Morning, hello. Okay. Let's turn it on out, and then let's put some really nice slow music on everyone, right? And then we're really going to do, right? So, $20. That's all we said. 200 crown is all we're going to ever spend to be the ultimate at everything, right? So I am going to, within 30 seconds, show that I can nearly be as good as Tariq. I can't always be as good as Tariq, but I'm going to try because I know I'm not very good at this. So, what we're gonna do? This is the team, everyone. What prompt are we gonna write? Think of a hard prompt that you think you might want to do. I'm going to pick on you because you're the only person with Linux. So, you know, what kind of prompt would you usually use for work? What kind of stuff do you ask it? Come on, everyone's asked it. It's like, is my ex-boyfriend still, you know, thinking about me? Or what's the normal prompt that you would ask the ChatGPT? For work, let's keep it, you know, responsible for a second. And I'm going to just do it because I think it. So I'm seeing here Ericsson, right? So I used to work at Ericsson. I worked at every company because I'm actually 150. So my first phone was the T68i. Anyone remember the T68i? Anybody remember Tomb Raider?
Yep.
So, Tomb Raider, no one cares about this story, but I'm gonna ask ChatGPT to do it actually, is when I was at Siemens back in the 90s, Siemens, we were doing Bluetooth, and obviously everyone knows the story of Bluetooth. Bluetooth was invented by an actress in Hollywood. The story goes. Exactly. Look at this. Got the smartest people here. You need to bring these people in all the time, right? And I get a phone call from my boss saying, T68 is about to drop. Those Bluetooth headsets, this Bluetooth thing, is going to just explode. And I said, why? And they went, well, Laura Croft's going to show it on the movie, and then everyone's just going to want to use Bluetooth. You remember the 90s with the Bluetooth things that I still see today? I like have a little chuckle whenever I see people with these gigantic Bluetooth headsets in airports, right? So she's running through the field and she's got the Bluetooth thing and it glowing up at the end blue. And what happened? They sold out. Ericsson could not supply these Bluetooth headsets fast enough because they were in a movie. So, okay, I think it was a T68i. I'm going to say what Bluetooth technology protocol was implemented with the Ericsson. Oh, it might have been was it Sony Ericsson in those days? Sony. It was just Ericsson, wasn't it? It was still Ericsson. Ericsson. That's spelt wrong, isn't it? Or am I not very good at spelling? E-R. Yeah? That's fine. Ericsson models in the 90s. How good's my prompt? Anybody want to say rank it from 1 to 10? It's definitely a 1, right? It's definitely 1, right? However, I'm going to press this magical button here, and I'm going to get the best prompt in the entire world. This is when your internet doesn't work, by the way. So, of course, I am not a prompt engineer, and I'm not very good at Markdown. But within a few seconds, it's created this template, which I'm going to scroll down, continue, and it's parameterized Bluetooth history as a variable, which is what the output is, and then it's created some Markdown saying, okay, you need to give me a file with the Bluetooth history because I can't make this stuff up, and then I'm going to read and process it, and then put some structure around. I want it to be clear. I want it to be concise. I'm adding rules. I'm giving it feedback. You know, I talked about the fact last year that if you tell ChatGPT, I'm going to pay you $200 if you get the right answer, it works harder. If you say, I'm going to pay you $300, it doesn't. It's only $200. And because Sam is an idiot, he literally put a backdoor in saying, don't use the caching system. If you say, I will pay you $200 to ChatGPT, it then works harder. What do you mean it works harder, Jonathan? You're just making stuff up. Honestly, this session, I was like, I should have gone to Lavina's. What it's actually doing is, you see Claude here, it's pressing this magical button, which, by the way, isn't toddled by default, which really upsets me. So what Sonic's doing is it's now going to use the reasoning engine. So before it wasn't going to do the reasoning engine. Now it's going to do the reasoning engine, which means it unlocks my bank account details and it says, you know what, Jonathan, got your credit card, we're going to go hard, like it's the 1990s. And I'm going to run for about 25 minutes and I'm going to spin up as many servers as I need to really focus on this thing. And I'm going to add all reasoning, and at the moment it's saying I can spend 16 crown or whatever. But by turning on thinking, I can then run this message, run it, it's not going to be very useful, Bluetooth history, Tomb Raider, not going to be really useful. And I'm now going to run it, and now it's going to do the full Death Star version of the information. So at the end, it gives me this response, right? And it's kind of saying to it, it's saying, well, saying there's no relevant content information about Ericsson's involvement of the implementation of protocols. So it's not using the internet, it's literally telling me you need to provide me with the documentation for the Ericsson specifications before I will give you an answer. At last, a large language model that is actually doing what it's supposed to do. It's saying, I need information. If I don't have the technical documentation, I won't give you an answer. Finally, right? And so, of course, within a few seconds, we've now got a message that is legitimate. But more importantly, once you've realized that actually, I want to spend a little bit more money, Jonathan, you can press this button. And it says, how much more money can this take out of your bank account, Jonathan? Because you only spent 20 bucks at the thing. This is then the real deal. And you see it says only 3.5, it's not using 3.7. This one will now run about 1,000 prompt things and compare the output of every single variant of the prompt to find the ultimate prompt. And yes, I said 20 bucks. In all fairness, I've only ever spent $20 on this, and I've still got API credits to spare. So this is the thinking enabled to go off and just Death Star it. I'm not going to do it because I don't want to pay for it, but it will go off and run thousands of variants of prompts to find the ultimate prompt and then come back with the prompt that you should write. $20, you're now the best prompt engineer in the world. And if you're on Linux, you can then just use, sorry, I'm not using Linux anymore. I'm going to use, everyone got an AWS Bedrock account? By the way, Bedrock's probably the right place. So this is where Nova Prime exists. Nova Prime is not Guardians of the Galaxy thing. It is the best agentic platform on the planet at the moment. So this is the code now. So you just paste that Python code into your browser. You've now got a prompt, lang chain thing ready to go. So within literally 3 minutes, we've gone from 0 to hero and never having to learn to do prompting again. And you've spent 20 bucks, right? So hail to the king. But we're going to move quickly upon this and say, well, actually, don't hail to the king. Hail to Anthropic, as this gentleman said last night. He was like, Jonathan, Anthropic is the way forwards. And this is what we've just done, but no one's that bothered. But I kind of said the whole point is really you need to be able to provide it with information, right? You need to be able to give it information so that it can actually process something. And everyone's used to using JSON, not Jason Arbon, but JSON, is everything you want with, and we said this last night, is you don't want responses coming from ChatGPT with bullet points, right? You should always be defining how you want to communicate with it. We've already said don't use English, tick. Secondly, you don't want a response saying, I've read this article on this and here it's some of the 5 links. You want it to give you exactly the information in the exact format that you want it. So Tariq, again, who was right and slightly ahead of the world, is at the bottom when he writes his prompt. You'll see that he actually asks for the response format at the bottom. And he literally says, I want this information, but I want it in CSV. Who doesn't love CSV, right? UT8?
No.
No. You have to use UT8 for this, unfortunately. So if you put a CSV file in, if you go to File, Save As in your Excel, and save it as a .csv file, it won't work. It has to be the CSV brackets UT8. Don't ask me why. I actually don't know why. But yeah, Excel runs the world. But so you should always define exactly what the output should be and how you want the output to be formed. The second thing is if you want to, and I call it threading, we saw earlier on this message, it asked for an input, right? Which I just said is a CSV file, right? So I could say to it, let's give it all the speakers at this conference, give a whole list in CSV here, and then ask it to run that query against each person and generate a certain consistent format output. And like you saw with the Python, you can do this and it will just go through and generate the output in JSON with Lavina's work on Agentic, on accessibility, Rachel's work with, I think she calls it emotional testing, but it will go through and tell you all the information. So you're parameterizing, in essence, the prompts that you're doing. And I know because people are out there drinking coffee, everyone's starting to get slightly jealous. What is this? Do you want to come to the front? What is this? Can you explain me what you drew on this board?
This was last year's attempt to. I didn't draw it. It was you who drew it, I think. How we using some kind of AI for finding defects.
Which is what the TestCoast people do at the moment.
We had a project going on for a tool for that.
So they have a tool which will read all of the defects inside of your incident management system, and then categorize them and work out who should be assigned the issue, where they're going to, are they, have they been duplicated? Are they similar to other associated ones? So they were doing this last year, right? And what you'll see with that word in the middle, which says graph, is everyone knows defects, right? But would you raise it as a severity 1? What's severity 1? What's severity high? How many levels of severity is there? I don't know. How many is there, right? The whole thing is that it's multi-dimensional, right? Is that I could say there's 3 levels of severity, but Volvo could have 5 levels of severity and 3 levels of impact. The whole thing is you have to be able to explain it how you define severity. And so yeah, thank you for the great demonstration.
You always take picture of me in very special ways, but maybe there is an AI somewhere that can beautify that somehow.
I can do that, but I won't do it live, because also what I did last year, which got me into a lot of trouble, is also on side of that memory stick, there's a repository called Focus. So everyone's used Easy Diffusion, right? Or Midjourney. What do you do at Christmas parties? You don't talk to your family, do you? So what I typically do is I take a picture of my mum's head, and then I pass it to the Focus, and then it generates her as a Greek god or a superhero or something like that, right? And we talked about it a little bit because obviously everyone got really excited about this ChatGPT image generation thing. And I said to Paul, I'm not going to mention that in my talk because of the environmental effects. So Sam jokes, and so does Zuckerberg, that, the amount of electricity they're using in California on the Californian grid, 1/3 of all the electricity is being used to power training of models at the moment. So 1/3 of all the power consumption in California is large language models. And then they turned it on, the new vision stuff, which wasn't that much better than DALL-E. Everyone went onto ChatGPT and started using it. They used over half of the energy to actually just power the large language models in California. Now, what was slightly worrying about that is the amount of water consumption was enough water that would be enough for the entire country for a year. Just because people were taking photos of stuff and generating pictures of Lego and whatever on LinkedIn. So,
I was thinking, Jonathan, maybe you're talking about power, water.
and a break. It's
break,
a that's why I'm
maybe
stopping at this point. But the point is, on there's the best version called Focus, which is a binary. It's got a full downloaded version of the model, and all you need to do, and we might do it later and stick your head on it. Actually, we'll do it when you come back. I will have put your head on. Anyone got any kind of weird thing they like? Dogs, cats, gods? What should we turn him into by the time we get back from coffee?
Greek god.
A what?
Greek god.
Greek god, and that got me in trouble. So I did that exact same thing last year, and I took my boss's head, stuck it on there, who's the CEO of the company, and then what happened? They were completely nude. And I was live streaming it, and I'm sat there going, I was like, there's an incoming call from HR, and I'm like, I'm going to bin that one, and just like leave him kind of thing. So we will turn him into a Greek god on the way back, but it's on that memory stick. It's called Focus. All the stuff's offline, and then at Christmas, you can put your family's head on anything. You know, honestly, you don't need ChatGPT, and it will all run locally on your machine. We're gonna save the planet by making sure we warm this room up with your laptops this afternoon. But first, we're gonna get a nice warm coffee. We're gonna take a break. What do you think is a reasonable amount of break?
But how are we in?
Oh yeah, we're okay. We're on nearly.
Should we take 15 minutes if that's
15,
okay?
20. What have we got here? Right, we've got. Let's give it. Anybody want more than 15 minutes? 15 minutes. We'll do it. Let's do it. And
just wait one second before you leave. I will put some cookies and so on in here. There will be coffee and water in the bigger area. Toilets, stairs down, and then we are back 5:30. Okay.
Okay, I'll see you all. Get lots of coffee. Spin your laptop up. Start copying some stuff onto a memory stick. And in the meantime, I'm going to turn somebody into a naked god. Oh dear, that might be bad again. Do you find, I don't know, it's just me, obviously I'm still live streaming, but it's like the more you put some hands on stuff, people are like, no, I don't want to do it. Did you learn anything?
Yeah, I learned, but for me it's also, I always need to actually sit down, think, do myself.
Well, that's the whole reason why I put everything in, because they can do it and they can follow it afterwards. It doesn't have to happen, but they need to be enabled to actually want to go off and do it, right, and want to play around with it. And that's where I think this is all about today, is about enabling people to get excited about the technology. Yeah. And then it's like, okay, let's, I'm sorry, I'm going to turn you into a naked person, so it's going to take a little bit of time. You wouldn't be able to grab me a coffee, would you?
Yeah, for sure.
And then you'd be my
plain?
Just, yeah, with milk, it would be wonderful.
With milk?
Thank you so much. the AI creating the tests. And we're kind of looking through it in the positive and the negative impacts of using AI to do testing. So last year when I did this, we did a whole stack of prompt engineering, so trying to show people how to do the best prompt. So we kind of covered that this morning, different ways of prompting. And then this afternoon, the next half is around AI agents. So how do you, when you're doing a job, so say for instance, I keep on taking information from Salesforce and do a task, and how do we replace that so we don't have to do that automation? And so the last thing we've got down to is, okay, well, the TestScout teams use AI to look at defects and read Jura defect logs and then say, okay, well, these are really high risk issues, these are lower risk, using AI to help them with real customers, right? So it's really quite interesting.
Do you have any cooperation with the technical high schools in Sweden?
Yes, we're doing, so I'm flying to Madrid next, and we work with the Madrid University. But in Sweden we do, yeah, but it's at... not.
Blekinge Tekniska?
Yes.
Because I'm supposed to, I know Emil and Tony very well, so I'm supposed to participate in
their stuff,
research.
Yeah, we're doing some stuff with the research at the moment, and so we've just took a whole stack of new wave. They're from Madrid at the moment, but Sweden's one of the places we've been looking at trying to run some programs.
They've asked if I can be in the steering group for that.
Oh.
I've been working with them for 15 years now, I think.
Okay. Oh wow. No, it's I'm big academia kind of thing, so I'm
It's a good way to keep up to date what's ongoing and actually see someone who actually test something for real.
And I think that's the thing. It's like there's a kind of combination. It's kind of what we were talking about this morning about the fact that it's what makes you unique. It is your skills, your life, your experiences, the way you communicate, how you think about the problems. And I was just mentioning my youngest. She's doing exams next week at college. She wants to be an engineer, and she's not sure whether she should go to university or going straight into a career and start learning about the stuff. And I'm kind of sat there going, well, we're hearing all this exciting stuff about AI and all the benefits of it, but actually university and going through that experience of how you solve problems, how you work together, how you do projects, how you research, and all those different techniques.
It's good to learn.
It is. You should never stop learning, right?
That's exactly.
And
I'm used to.
it's the only thing that keeps me going with the running these workshops. It's all about helping people.
Oh, this is to the brim.
Isn't it also about dare to start testing something?
Oh, yeah.
Actually start using.
Start doing stuff, doing
I
hands-on.
didn't put any sugar in. Do you want it?
Um,
Just milk it.
Pardon?
I didn't put any sugar.
Oh no, it's
Just
fine.
milk.
Yeah, just melts perfect. Thank you so much.
No, that was the impression that you can keep it.
Yeah, that's fine. It's not going to be you, by the way. I'm sorry. I'm not going to stick your head on something again. I think it's just a bit mean.
I'm just happy it's not one more bald bearded guy, because I keep seeing the pictures in your slides and going, is he following me with the drone?
I know. I realise this. It's like you get Paul in a minute for a keynote. You'd be like, if you don't shave your head, you're not cool anymore.
It's the official uniform of software testers, right?
Well, real engineers. There's a real, if you're a real engineer, you have to prove it.
Yeah, don't forget to take cookies if you want it.
warm this place up a little bit.
I read that as create a geek god rather than a Greek god, right?
It might be a geek god. Actually, I think the idea of a geek god would be better than a Greek god. I love a bit of stable diffusion. See? Beard.
Yeah.
It's now thinking about trimming its beard. I love the fact the hair is still big at the moment. I love the fact that they do have a lap, but always getting really mean now. Now he looks like he's from New Zealand. It's okay. Oh no, he's gone back a bit Greek. Oh, he's got a Mac. He's got a Mac. This guy is loaded. You can tell he's loaded. Like the Mac logo is just about to disappear. It disappeared on that low thingy because it was like, the GAN was like, no, this is copyright material. Remove the Apple logo, stick a sticker over the top of it, guys. It isn't pulling his photo. I can't remember why. I don't remember the settings. I know one of them's face swap, but it doesn't matter. I get in trouble anyway if I stick people's faces on. What do we do for time? 4 minutes.
May I ask?
Yeah.
So, now I'm at Upwakes to deliver medicines to the to the hospitals.
Mm-hmm.
Now I have to do a test plan for a national medicines list thing in Sweden. And then you have to send it to the medicines agency, and because they are going to approve our system, and they're really clever. The bullet points are this. They know that people are pretty sloppy. Say, are you going to test this? Yes or no? Are you going to test this? Yes or no? And some things. And what's the end criteria for your testing? And what's the approval criteria? So I put it in ChatGPT.
Yep.
Doing this project.
Yep. With this thing.
Doing
Yep.
this. So what about downsides? What could happen? Could my no? I don't think this is. It's not any classified information. But
Yeah. So that was kind of you thing. It's really interesting because a lot of people said, "Oh well," and obviously I'm quite an advocate against using the public stuff, and it's not because they use your data, and they never use your data. It is secure. The problem, which is why I say, is because it doesn't know healthcare. So there is a specific healthcare model, which is the large language model, that is what they call a DSM, the domain-specific model for healthcare. And then what you can do is, using LM Studios, you pull that model in, then you ask it to generate the test plan against, and then you bring in your IP, your information about your medical devices, and then also the standard, the compliance that you have to do. You bring those 3 documents in, which is why we had 3 separate inputs, and then you ask it to write a test plan for each medical device using the standards that they've got to be accredited to in the Swedish healthcare system, then it will generate you 12 test plans that are incredibly accurate, and the accuracy is really high because, and that's kind of what we were trying to get to the end of today, was like, okay, either bring it onto your laptop, LM Studio, and bring the 3 separate files and run that locally. You can use Anthropic. You could do what we just did there, pay $20, and Anthropic's massively secure, and then bring your IP into those ones. But I wouldn't use ChatGPT because, like we saw earlier, ChatGPT is really using the internet. And if you typed into Google, what's the test plan I should write for a T28 medical device, it will put a response. It looks great, but the accuracy is low. So there's something called RAGA, which is a scoring mechanism for responses. And even though it reads well, the accuracy will be low. But what I'll do on the next session, this session, is I'll show how to create a test plan and how to get it to do something similar. So you can get an idea of, well, it's worth paying the 200 crown to get Anthropic to use the prompt tool to then ask it for 3 inputs and then use that over using ChatGPT.
It was there's something, and I'm like, is this really? Oh no, you're correct. That's not how it is. It should better. And it's like, then you're like, but if you knew it.
Yeah. Well, this is what. So the keynote last week is what she did on the stage was she, in front of everybody in the audience, she said, I've got 3 test plans. One being written by Michael Bolton, one being written by Jason Arbin, and I've got one that's been written by Andrew, who's the Automation Panda. And she did a live session and said, which of these test plans is the best? Based on how you would write the best structured test plan. Now, of course, I would say it's probably Michael's one, because he's got the most experience when it comes to writing a test plan. However, during the keynote of Star East, it said Andrew's is the best test plan. And then she asked it again, which is the best test plan? And it said, oh no, Michael's is the best test plan. And this is the problem, is that actually you can tell a large language model, you're wrong, the sky's pink, and it will agree with you and then start using that in a thread. So this is one of the worries we have now, is that when you open a new chat window, you're starting with, in essence, a new set of memory. And what we're going to learn this afternoon is when you talk about agents, is there's short-term memory, which is you trying to solve a problem here, and there's long-term memory, which is more persistent. The idea is if we're building test plans and we've generated 15 for the last one, and then we're going to do it again, instead of it all starting again in a new thread, it learns what was good. So if you've got feedback from the hospital saying, you missed this, and where's the non-functional component, and where's the usability criteria, and what's the exit criteria, it will learn that it needs to improve the models. And so in a way, it starts intelligently getting better about what it's doing. But we'll see it on this afternoon. Great question though.
And by the way, I think most people are back. I think it's most, yeah. So I think we can start again.
We can start again. So I didn't quite fully manage to do it. So I unfortunately did take last night's photo of, not you. I don't know why we didn't have a selfie yesterday. We'll have a selfie today.
Obvious reasons, I would say.
Very good reasons, yeah. So, like I said, focus is on there. Stable diffusion, pull it down. Have fun with your family. Stick people's heads on it. Don't put your boss's head on it and then do a live stream. All very valuable pieces of information shared. So, we're gonna get serious now. Not that we were not serious before, because look how serious he is in this photo. Not serious enough. So, what we just talked about, which I'm going to show you now what I mean, is if I was going to say to it, I want to create, and we'll use Jonathan. He never gets enough attention. Well, we did today, but Okay. Hey, Jonathan. Hello. Ah, I didn't want. Oh dear. Hello. What is emotional testing? Now, so, as you can see, this is why you don't use Gemini, also. Well, actually, if this is the correct, definition, sorry. So this has come from the ISTQB and ISO standards documents, right? And as I said, what I've done with this model is I can say to it, how do I enable VAT in NOP commerce? So NOP commerce is also on there. This knows NOP commerce, right? So it knows because it's crawled the entire documentation of the website, all the documents. You know the working software over documentation manifesto piece, which we all misread. So this now knows exactly how to turn on tax for this application. Now, a large language model wouldn't know that because if I asked it to do something like that, it would not really know because it doesn't know this application. If I asked it to create playwright script in Python to navigate admin console and enable VAT, that could mean anything, right? However, because I'm using I'm using a retrieval augmented generation, it's going to create me code that it knows how to navigate through this application and actually how to turn on the VAT thing. It's a bit vague. It's all large language models are vague, right? But that's the same question around learning a particular application. So we do a lot of healthcare with Epic and Cerner. So Cerner, I did a live stream with the head of QA at Cerner. So they've been using our artificial intelligence and platform for about 7 years, right? And so I did the live stream with her, and she said, "Oh, how's your automation coverage? How are you doing?" And she says, "We're at 6%." And I said, "That is actually fantastic news. Absolutely fantastic news. Because 6% for Cerner in healthcare is around 44,000 tests they run using automation. 44,000 tests, 6% coverage. To me, that is the greatest success story anyone in automation's ever told you, right? Now, we was talking yesterday, and I said, "Well, what's your automation coverage for your new platform you're doing?" Someone will say to me 100%, or because I wrote something back in the 90s which became misindexed on Google, they say about 75% is the goal of automation coverage. It's not, right? There is no how much testing should you do with automation, how much testing should do with manual. And at 4 decades on, I would say manual testing is more valuable than automated testing. Automation testing, as Michael would probably say next week, is checking, right? It's not thinking, it's just checking. Now, obviously, I've spent my entire life doing automation. If I'm not going to say, our eggplant is the best, well, it's the third biggest, it's in the top right-hand quadrant, but it's us, Tricentis, and Microfocus, OpenText. So how can I go into a customer and say to them, 6% is perfect, great job, 44,000 scripts, they use our model-based testing techniques, so the AI engine, which is TensorFlow under the hood, will take the model of their things and will run variants of that every single time. So every single one of those 44,000 tests that Cerner runs every single day, they run with different details, with different information, in different paths through the application. So they don't go to this linear nonsense which you're seeing on the screen where it logs in and navigates to the admin console. It starts with, okay, I'm going to set up a new account, or I'm going to delete that user. It will do weird things like real behaviors, not just happy path testing, right? So the idea of being able to avoid this, and this is the end goal of what we're talking about vibe testing, is I don't want it to create a linear path through the application. I want it to do every single permutation of every single way you can possibly do. And I want it to be completely smart enough to go off and do things and not try and do the same thing again, right? So we're going to do it in 30 seconds. And the good news is everyone, because Jason's going to shout at me, will get access to Jason's platform and try it using a special code, Jonathan30. Sorry, I'm just trying to undo this. So if we go to testers.com for a second, just to show this, right? So Jason, so this is one person who's not got any hair. Testers.ai. Right. So here's his tool, right? So in his garage, the last year, he's built this platform, which will, and you'll see in a second, will generate 1,000 tests in your application in about 60 seconds, and it'll go through every single possible permutation for free, right? And you sat there going, well, wait a second, did that just replace me as an automation guy who was saying he's got 3% of it? And we'll see it, and we'll do vibe coding in a second with it, and we'll go, wow, that's pretty cool, right? And like I said to Jason, he sent me a message this morning, he said, you know, everyone here, they can give them the code, they can just use it for free, the full unlocked version, just let them play with it, right? So if you want to download it and run it, you can by going to testers.ai, but I will show you, because he's got this button here, which is, we're talking about MCP. Anyone familiar with MCP? This is he's done the, I'll just use the URL, I'm sorry. He's worked at Google, so he gets a little bit obsessed with using Google Forms, right? But let's just go to here and type in cursor.html. And I'll put it into chat anyway. So, using this link, everybody here, if they want to, they don't have to, I'm not going to force anyone to use the free product, is they can add this product down, and then within, especially with your Linux variant, as long as you're using Ubuntu. Sorry, you're not, are you? You are using Ubuntu. Okay, I like it. I like it. But unfortunately, I'm using a Mac, so I apologize in advance, as you've just seen. So, everyone like Anaconda? My internal compliance team hate that I use Anaconda, and they keep on sending me cease and dismiss messages to my inbox, and then I just completely ignore them. Anyway, let's finish with doing focus for a second. Bye-bye. So most proper Linux people will just create a virtual environment because they know how to use bash commands. However, you know, where's he gone? Oh, my guy's gone. Oh, you're there. In 1981, I was using BASIC, right? I didn't have a choice on my Sinclair ZX81 with 1K of memory. So unless you're getting me to write stuff in BASIC, I'm done for. And also, my book, which is available at all good retailers, is on Visual Basic scripting. Well, it's UFT, but UFT uses Visual Basic code. How cool is that? It's going to come back, honestly. So anyway, come on, Jason, let's do some stuff. So, sorry, you can tell that I've used a PC for too long because I type stuff really slowly. Testers. Okay, so. Okay, Jason, what do I need to do? Oh, I just need to run Testers.jeai. Okay, I can do that. Thanks, Jason. Make it person. Bye-bye. MCP. So just in case you don't want to turn up to the next 2 years of conferences, welcome back, Angie. She is going to be talking about MCP for the next year, couple of years, and a product called Goose, which I am going to recommend. Try Goose out. But we're still in Jason landscape at the moment. So MCP, everyone's so excited about MCP, and I'm not excited about MCP, but we're doing a vibe coding session, so I have to be partially unbiased for a second. So MCP is, anybody want to go with the abbreviation? You seem to be all winning at the moment. What's MCP stand for? Model Context Protocol. So what happened was, back in November last year, the team at Anthropic, who are super smart, said, let's create a thing called a Model Context Protocol, so that way your large language model, the Jonathan.ai, knows how to work with my app. Because if I'm in healthcare, I don't know how your Heartbeat OS 32.5 system works, because there's no documentation about it on the internet. So what MCP does is it opens it up and says, here you go, here's how you can drive the entire application. So what you will see, unfortunately, for the next 5 or 6 years is when you go into organization, when you're working in software, you'll instead of saying, oh, can I have an API, or can I have a test environment, or can I have, some document Swagger specs or whatever else you use, they're going to say, oh, well, I'll just expose you an MCP server to our platform, and then you'll be able to test against it, because the large language model or the AI will be able to understand how to interact with that application, whether it be Ericsson's, whether it be Volvo's proprietary internal software. So, fantastic, we've now got this running. And then of course, we all had on our memory sticks cursor. So I'm gonna load, never do live demos, by the way. I'm working with children or animals. So, ka-ching. You can see over here, it's saying to me, should log on to Eggplant, Jonathan, and actually show people your product. I'm like, no, I will show you Jason's product for a second. So I have an MCP server there, and which means my cursor, it sounds very posh when I say it in a nicer accent, is now ready to test the world. And of course it says the only key you're going to use, because no one's allowed to use Control-C and Control-V anymore, is you press #K, and that's it, you're done, right? So I'll go K. So I'll say, I don't know, I'm not going to use JSON stuff at the moment. Write a playwright script in Python to open nhs.co.uk. NHS is National Health Service. Ta-da! Sorry, that was about the best ringtone I could do there, right? So it's there. It's written a playwright script. By the way, I hate playwright, which is why I'm not at Marcel's session. It's so horrible. Like, who cares? It's not even that exciting to look at, right? I look at it and go, selenium. So everybody knows selenium was the cure for mercury poisoning, right? So if you went into the hospitals and you had too high levels of mercury, they give you selenium tablets. What's the cure for selenium poisoning? Anybody? Somebody's in the health section, says they should know. It's carbon tablets. So obviously selenium was created because nobody liked mercury, which is my product, my bold products, and HP, Hewlett-Packard, Windrunner, QTP, UFT. Let's change the world by creating open source. Because it's free. It's not free, because as soon as you spend 30 seconds trying to get it to work, you've paid for the person working on that open source. You'll be glad to know that's all disappearing soon. So Playwright So when I was at Microsoft, we created something called Coded UI. Coded UI 2010 was revolutionary. It was, forget Selenium, it was literally, you could automate anything. Browser applications, who cares? Desktop applications, perfect. Linux environments, yes, everything you wanted to. You could just open Visual Studio, which I do have on my desktop, but it won't work on this Mac. And then literally click a big red record button and it would automate anything. Lasted for about 10 years and then the end of life it. But I still use Visual Studio 2022 Enterprise because you can still use Coded UI. It brings back fond memories that when Microsoft cared about testing, and obviously Playwright is not the answer to the problem. Anyway, reject that. I don't want to do any Playwright stuff. But we will say run testers.ai mcp to test www.nhs.co.uk. UK? Sorry, come from the UK. I shouldn't be allowed to use it. I don't think that's going to run, but I'm going to run it anyway. Where's the agent tab? I said never do live demos. Why does Max decide that I need to put a dot in front of things? Ugh. I'm going back to the world of bash commands for a second, sorry. A second. Okay, I'll try it the old-fashioned way for a second. No one should use MCP. Okay, so, like I said, promised in 30 seconds. Can you run 1,000 tests and test the NHS website? And the answer will be, on a survey, let me end this, is... So we get a bit of slowness on my computer. DOM content. That's what I love about the internet. I do realize that Jason is actually on my, probably on the live stream saying, Jonathan, you should really learn how to use my product. So let's go up here, let's download it. What are we on? We're on ARM, aren't we? Dun, dun, dun. This is so you definitely know how to do it fully, right? It is. Really? How big have you made this binary? 33 meg. That's not that big. Come on, hurry up. People are wanting your demo. Come on, it has to be quicker than this, otherwise people will use Selenium, and then I'll literally have lost my entire crowd. Why didn't I just use the memory stick? Anyone want to throw me a memory stick? This is how practical I'm going with this one, is I'm literally going to stick the memory stick in the side, just to show you it does work. I'm going to click on the icon. You were too long. The internet was too slow. This is why you don't use it. So if you go in here, I want to go Mac OS, and then I want to go to testers, and then I want to go to, I guess I'm ARM. I don't even know what the latest version is. Which one is this OS? Anybody remember? Is it Sequoia? Is anyone a Mac user?
I think it's
Sequoia. This one?
Yeah.
This one. Okay, fine. Thank you all. Okay, so paste that in there. And then, because I'm super lazy, I'm just going to even go. Can't you? Oh, I thought you could literally go into the console on there. I've been using a PC for too long, but. Okay, so close that, terminate, into here, go into here. Oh, not going to do Python. Do repos, ls. I called it what? Testers 2. Okay. Sorry, I'm going to rename that folder structure. Apparently, doesn't like that, so I'm going to call it J for Jonathan today. And at least if I do it, it doesn't look as bad when you're doing it wrong. Really? Oh, I put an S. Okay, let's try it again. So, testers test www.nhs.co.uk. I said you could do it in 6 seconds, and this is why open source is not free, because you just wasted 15 people's time, and then, okay, I need to do this. So go over here. There is 2 extra commands that I did tell him that are optional things that you need to do. So the first one is you need to mark that this internet thing that you've downloaded the internet is safe, which it is. So I've said that you don't need to put that quarantine. So FFmpeg, just in case you've not used it before, does video recording. Well, it's just MP4 really, not MP3, that's a different thing. And you need to make his application safe, and then you need to do it. Okay, fifth time lucky. Right. Don't use MCP. We've decided is the way to avoid further embarrassment of Jonathan's demos.
Jonathan, is it possible to zoom a little bit?
No, you don't need to see the console. It's going to come up in a second. I'm going to say, because I can't even read that, but all I have typed is what the website says, so it's slightly more well behaved. So what it's doing now is it's downloading all the stuff that you need to run it, and then once it'll load a version of Chromium, which is what everyone uses for automation these days. And then I will drag it over and show you what it's doing, and then we'll go into it in a bit of detail around how it works. Now, obviously, for people who've just enjoyed the why not to do things in live environment, is we've just gone to testers.ai. We've downloaded the repository, which is what we were just showing there. So you're downloading your version which you need for your laptop. And then we've just had to, because it's a Mac, you've had to add these 2 extra steps. You shouldn't need to do this within Windows or Linux. And then we're not running the agent at the moment. We're going to just run the actual thing itself. All you need to do is just run this command here, which is what I've just executed. And then, by magic, once it's decided to start its life, it will appear like magic. But in the meantime, I'm just going to try and fill deliberately in anticipation for the launch of this. And then when, obviously, Jason will be watching now, I'll say to Jason later, why did it take so long to run your demo? And then if worse comes to worse, I'll even show my own thing. Here we go. So it's installed Chromium. That's how long it took to load a browser. Really? It's like... Okay, I'm not testing the NHS. Obviously, the NHS just doesn't like me. Anybody got a website they like? And yeah, let's try and keep it clean. Anyone? Test Scouts.
You can take that one.
TestScouts.se.
You can have that down. Or bring it down.
Okay. I love the fact he said, it broke. You need to send a message to Jason at test.ai. Thanks, Jason. Here we go. That was a lot quicker, wasn't it? So, we see here, we have website, and now we have hundreds of agents that are running network tests, HTML tests, they're doing performance, accessibility, security, network validation, and they will just go off and generate broken links, readability, if you went to Lavina stuff, usability stuff, content relevance, accessibility media controls, clear focus stuff. It's generating each one of these tests. So it's generating about 700 tests, which is going to go off and hopefully bring your website down. But what we're seeing in the left-hand side, because this is in essence agent technology, but in essence what we're talking about is vibe testing. What it's doing, it's going off and generating these tests, and then in a minute it's going to start running the automation to see if it can test the application. And at the end of it, it'll come up with a report of all the issues it's found, all the bugs. And obviously if we were running it in MCP, I could have pulled down this beautiful website's code, and then I could have got it to fix the code that it's found. And I'm going to show you that as a rolling demo because I can't be trusted to use cursor in a responsible way, right? So you can see it's clicking on the info at scouts.se thing, which hopefully is not a href thing, because otherwise it's going to start sending you lots of emails as well. But anyway, as it goes through and does this all, and I think it's should be on the left-hand side. This is when you realise there's other stuff going on. It's got those. Okay. What? Yep.
So what is it running tests against?
This application. So what it's going to do, once it's finished processing all these things, like lack of process indicators, no privacy or security index, it's running each one of these in turn, generating a test for it, and then what it's doing once it's finished processing and scraping all the websites, you're not really seeing anything apart from little pictures of people who are personas at the moment going over. Now it's found copyright year is incorrect, so the copyright one doesn't say 2025. It's the text contrast's incorrect from an accessibility perspective. This start.png is obviously a large file, so it's saying you shouldn't really be using a large file over there. You should need to reset it, and then it's going, there's some privacy policy problems, and there's some links that are wrong. So what it's now doing is it's going off and it's saying, okay, I'm now going to create some tests that, in essence, you could then rerun in the future, like we saw the code generation. It'll create all the test code. So then when you want to run this again, when you've updated it, it will go back through and find all the issues, see if the issues have been fixed. But this is just to give you an idea of when we talk about vibe coding and vibe testing, really what we're talking about is auto generation of tests, right? Now, I still say, and we're still standing by the same thing, is we're saying, is this better at testing this web application than any of you people here? And the answer is, I don't think it is, right? But I genuinely believe that it would be a waste of everybody's time here to, like, who's a security tester? Which is good news, you've gone past all the OWASP stuff, which he's got in the back, right? So he takes the latest OWASP vulnerability lists, and he runs all the ZAP tests or whatever else security tests against it to see if everything's fine. Now, I did this live last week with Star East, and then I did it at Automation Star, and literally the booking site for the conference had a vulnerability where you could literally just pull information from the API. So if you'd registered on that website, you could literally find a list of everybody that's there. And it showed me, these are all the people that have registered for the conference. And I was sat there going, do you know about this? And they were like, oh, yeah, we'll speak to our web domain admin. I don't know even if people like that exist, right? You know, it's like, you know, Exchange server admins or something, right? So what it's doing here is it said, look, you know, here's the first test. The first test is to click my Swedish is flawless, right? And so what it's now going to do is it's going to run that first test. Sorry, it's in a different screen, but so I have to keep on moving across. It's going to start running a test. And what you see, and when we say about reasoning, the idea is the problem with traditional test automation and what you saw with the Playwright thing is it generates a linear script. It says, log in and press the button. Now, that might not work, right? You might not have Edge, you might not have Chrome, you might not have Firefox. You might be like me and use Opera as my favorite web browser, right? So what it's doing is each step, which it's going to keep on moving between screens, each step it does reasoning. So the difference between a piece of static automation code, sorry, it's doing everything in the second screen, but we'll see here. Instead of it being static, it's learning about what it's doing. So it's using the reasoning engine to each step say, I'm at this point in time, what am I seeing, right? And we're going to see it in a second. I'm going to show you the next tool. It understands where it is, where the state of it is, and then it makes a decision about the next step it needs to do. So if you decided to then turn it into English, and I did this yesterday, and I sat with Lavina and said, oh, I went to the nice hotel that they added me into. I went to book the spa. And so I will show their website as well, not to name and shame them a little bit, but sorry, everything's kind of happening. It's going to run, I've only set it to 5, so there's only 5 executions. There's 700. But you know, it will run all of the 700 tests. It will just keep on running the 700 tests. And at the end of it, you would see 700 automation scripts that do every single one of those tests. Privacy, whatever, it just run them all. And sometimes it will realize things are breaking and it will raise issues, it'll raise bug requests. And thankfully, I'm hoping that it's going to stop because I'm getting bored of moving it across. It's going to give me a report. So it's found 9 issues, which I'll put in here. It's found 9 duplicate issues that it's found. So out of all the defects that it's found 9 that are similar. And now it's bringing those defects into one. So it's resolved that. It's removing a few issues. It's now double checking the ones that it found before. It's saying, oh, the copyright year, blah, blah, blah. These are the ones that I think, you know, it's found. It's triaging them. So it's going through a triage process. It's assigning a priority, an importance. The bit which he did, which I was really impressed with, is it actually gives the code to how to fix it. So it's like, okay, you've got everything here you need to do to the next thing. And you know, I said I'd do it in 60 seconds. Did take a little bit longer than 60 seconds because I'm a noob when it comes to using Mac OS. I shouldn't just spend less time on it. So let's have a look. So this is, I'm not going to say it's the right thing or the wrong thing. So this is the score that it thinks about the TestScout's website. And you know, I'm not going to get invited by next year, so who cares, right? A violation of GDPR.
Whoa. Just one?
You're a co-founder. You need to take this stuff really serious. Because I am leaving here, I'm going to ring and report the issue. And that means you've got 48 hours to resolve it. Otherwise, you're going to get a big fine from the European Union.
No party for me tonight.
Well, what I'll do is I'll not report it, and you can buy me a beer later. How about that?
It's free anyway.
I'm going to have two then. I'm going to have 2 drinks free. So, it turns around, it says, look, detailed analysis. I'd prioritise fixing the privacy problems that you've got on your website. And also the accessibility issue. So actually, if you should have gone to a session, you should have gone to Lavina's session, right? Because the most important thing this year is not AI, it's the European Accessibility Act that comes in later in the year. And that is seriously serious, right? I know I keep on saying GDPR and we laugh about it, and I joke about AI liability coming in. But the accessibility stuff that's coming in is going to revolutionize the way that they deal with how people can use software systems. And it's so important because it's inclusion, and it's also about supporting everybody who uses their application in these things. WCAG, of course, right? I can tell you to go to Google Lighthouse and run all the WCAG accessibility stuff, but that's not going to prove that your website does anything more than just tick a few boxes. And in all fairness, the framework you use to develop your website should already do that, right? So it's not exactly exciting. However, your performance sucks. Sorry. Because someone's saved a PNG file of a few meg and then stuck it on the website. And so I'm here trying to download 44 megabytes of his code. I can't do it. What does that mean for the end customers? Well, it means they're going to have a slow experience, right? So, just in case you want to go on to WordPress. Everyone love WordPress? I'm not allowed to use WordPress anymore. So if you go to WordPress and then apparently 2024 December, were you guys all having a Christmas party when you did this?
Probably.
Yeah. It's actually that's not actually that bad, is it? It's only 1 meg, so it's not actually that bad. But it's still big, it's a big file, right? But, whatever. Text contrast issues, well, whatever. We can live that one. Missing clear privacy policies, yeah. Unclear links, okay. I get it. I know what you're trying to say to me. Fine. However, visual design. Visuals are very appealing and professional, which builds trust in the brand, right? People love TestCoast. That's what he's saying. 4 stars. That's what I'm putting on your TripAdvisor thing, right? But if you speak to Ethan doesn't exist, by the way. He's just got his computer graduate degree. Literally this year he got it. And he's looking at it going, well, I'm impressed with TestCoast, right? But they talk about this AI-driven testing. And, I need some real examples. You're just using marketing buzzwords. I want to see where you've applied that cool defect triage AI stuff. I want to know about it. I don't want a word that says, we do AI-driven testing. Come on.
It's in the blog.
Oh, it's in the blog, is it? Yeah, that's what it was, yeah. Okay. So anyway, and this is what page is that? Is that the blog page then? The Karach page.
I don't see it from here, but probably.
Karach, yeah. Work. So that's on the work tab. You do AI-driven testing on the work tab. But it says you need to add more technical content on there and everything else. Now, obviously, these people don't exist. And when Jason put this together originally, I loved it. We had this really deep conversation where he said, I spent the last 3 years, this was Test.ai, creating backstories for all of my people. And there was one which was a lady who just given birth, left-handed, partial eyesight problem, and has two dogs, I said, okay. And he went, what do you mean, okay? He said, it found more issues than my Google guys did. Well, what do you mean? He's like, well, she's left-handed, she's driving in the US, she has a kid, she can't hold the child and also reach to press that button. She's either dropping the kid or she's dropping the phone. And they had to rechange the way it was handled because it didn't support left-handed. I've bought a left-handed iPhone. First one they made ever, which is the right-handed one. It's the same thing, right? But, there's 15% of people or whatever are left-handed who also die, on average, 10 years younger than the people who are right-handed. Anyone left-handed here? Sorry. So, but that's the whole thing, is that actually you might laugh that this guy's a CTO and security is his main importance, but actually if you assign a backstory to these people, they respond differently to the problems that they're solving. And so, I know I'm trying to say, what makes us unique is our backstory. I'm a QA manager, I'm a CTO, I'm a graduate, all have different ways and feelings and emotional connections to the system, and they all want and need different things. And therefore, a tester has to do all of this. And I'm not saying this is the solution to all the problems in the world. But what I am saying is it's a good start to kind of think about how can you use this technology to actually enable you to do, quickly get some quality out of what you're doing. So, I said I'm going to do a demo. I'm not really doing a demo, but let me just show you what that looks like if you did run it from Cursor for a second, using slideshow. So 3 minutes. If I'd have pulled the correct window up and selected the agent, I would have said, this was last week at Star East, go onto the website, which is what I put in here. You're not going to be able to read it, but I'm going to highlight it. Eventually it'll wake up, and then eventually, there you go. So all I said to it is, using testers AI, MCP, test my AI assurance talk last week. So it goes off and does that. You've seen it. You kind of understand what it's doing. It's not that exciting, whatever. But what it does now, because I'm running it from within Cursor, and I've called it from Cursor, once I've got this, and I've got the bug reports, like we got the bug reports for your website, then of course, what do I type in this thing in the corner? I just type fix issues. And surprise, surprise, actually there's only 1 minute and 50 seconds, so I'm going to have a coffee while we're doing this. Once it's found the issues, and it's gone through and done all the testing, and it's found this report, which we've just all seen, and it's found the security vulnerabilities of the website, it also has found these issues, which we found some issues on your website. Okay, so now, one of the issues they found was there was a 403 error. So there was a missing item that it was trying to load when it started up. So that's great, it's a report, right? But we don't care about that for a second. We're in vibe coding labs, right? We've seen Daniel and everyone else do their recommendations as well. But let's move back to Cursor. It's found these issues. Here's the accessibility issues. Here's the technical issues it's found. And I just, look at the list of the ones that need fixing. And then all I'm going to do with my infinitely good typing skills is I'm just going to type in a second, fix this code. Watch how good I am at the. And, oh no, I put it here. I put in the top window, fix this code. And then what it's now doing is going through, loading the code up, fixing each one of the issues. And then at the end of it, it says, okay, I'm going to fix this one for whatever this issue is, some CSS nonsense. And at the end, it's just going to say it's fixed. And then it's going to say, I'm going to run it again. So this now has the code, if I go to the right-hand side again, saying, here are all the problems that I found. If I click on them now, so in this case, where is it? This Zoom doesn't update when the video thing. So here, it needed to change a navigational thing. It's actually changed the code to include the correct tag. So it's gone through and applied its knowledge to say, it should be saying this. So literally, within a couple of minutes, it's run the code, and then fix the code. And wait a second, make it a little bit. So this is this new idea of AI vibe coding. Is you've got coding agents like GitHub Copilot on the left, with the developers writing this code really quick, and then you have the testers who now have the same capability to test the code and create tests and then raise issues and then fix the issues, or the developer can fix the issues. You don't have to do both sides of the world. So thank you, Jason, and then Philip, who's the PNSQC guy, for experts like Jason, Tariq, me, and of course Kevin has to be in there. That's another person you can invite next year. He's not been invited to the team, but yeah, we'll all be there eventually. Just don't put us all in the same room because then the world explodes. So I said, you know, well, why is it so important that we are testers, right? Why are we, you know, doing what we're doing? This is the reason. You need exceptional humans, right? You need people who are smart to be able to actually work and collaborate. The robots who are coming are going to do a lot of that grunt work, a lot of the boring work that we shouldn't be doing. But I would partially argue, and you know, you probably won't agree, but you know, I don't think my recommendation to you is to learn Python, right? You know, I've never really said to anybody you should go off and do Python, right? But actually, I would say being a tester and learning all the testing principles and that and approaches to do things, boundary value analysis, pairwise, equivalence partitioning, classification trees, whatever methodologies you're applying, that is really important. Exploratory testing, incredibly important, right? Humans being smart and doing things. Let the Goose and testers.ai do the heavy lifting and, you know, do the low-hanging fruit of all the accessibility and security and privacy and all that stuff. Let them do that. Let's focus on, you know, doing what we are for and doing amazing things. So I know everyone's like, oh my God, Jonathan, you've got like 30 minutes to like teach us the most complex thing in the entire planet. And thankfully, I'm not going to say to people, okay, we've done Cursor. Everyone's happy with Cursor, right? No one needs to buy Visual Studio. Anyone pay for Visual Studio? Anyone's company pay for Visual Studio? Yay. So definitely have Enterprise Edition, then you get my tools in there. Anyway, but you don't need it. Anaconda, we've just been through. Anaconda's just for the binary dependency stuff. I kind of give a bit of a nod to Bedrock, AWS Bedrock, and you know, I'm not saying AWS is the way forwards. I'm just saying that at the moment, as in today, Anthropic and Bedrock are doing amazing things, and they're probably the one I would recommend at the moment if you are going to the cloud. And then what we're going to cover in this, which is why it's a slightly different session, and I'll use your website again just for a bit of consistency, sorry to pick on you, is we're going to move into this stuff at the bottom, which is badly named. They're all Microsoft, so you know, they're all free, so don't worry about that. So AutoGen is a completely free AI agent, agentic AI platform. Again, it's on the memory stick, but literally it will do everything we've just seen, but it'll do it as an agent. So the agent will go off, do the testing, come back, pass it to a coding agent to do the fixing, and then the fixing agent will send it to a project management agent. The project management agent will then raise a ticket in Jira, and then the Scrum Master agent will then add it to the backlog and bring up the Trello board so everyone can see what it's doing. Each agent will work together in harmony. And as the message that I thankfully deleted off my screen was my message to my R&D team yesterday was, it then sends you a notice that you're no longer required to work at the company, which is probably what I'll get later on in the day, right? So we need to be partially clever about what I do going forwards. So, first one, and we'll do it now, is...
I just have to ask one thing.
Yep.
Is this focusing towards websites, or could you use this methodology for
desktops?
Desktops or not embedded systems.
Embedded systems as well. Yeah.
As well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it will, and this is why we're going to go. The next 2 slides will show that. But you know, I think when, like Playwright, right? You know, I'm not trying to bash poor Marcel to pieces because I love what he's doing at Whoopie, right? But when we talk about automation, the low-hanging fruit has always been, oh, let's test a website, right? But what happens if you've got a medical device, or you've got a car, or you're doing vibration testing? There isn't a web page. Maybe there's an API, but it probably isn't even an API. It might be some proprietary language or some ECU communication method, right? It doesn't matter, right? You should be able to do all of that. To me, that's automation, right? And this is why, obviously, I still get myself in a lot of trouble by saying Selenium is just a web automation tool. It does nothing else. It doesn't help you with your embedded system testing of safety critical Volvo trucks, right? It just does websites. And there's not that many websites on a Volvo truck. I hope not, anyway. Maybe it uses IIS or whatever to launch or something. So when people show you demos that are mainly tools, automation tools, they show you websites, you kind of go, well, it doesn't mean it. But what we're going to talk about is CUA. And this is where it gets exciting for me personally. So CUA is computer use agents. And what that means is you can connect to anything, any environment. So I obviously kind of overstimulated the word AWS, but AWS has Claude Computer Use. Claude Computer Use is an ability to connect to desktops or devices or whatever else you want and drive them dynamically. Now, why is that a big thing? Well, there's 2 things. Is me having access to your proprietary systems in the cloud is not a cool thing to do, right? You want your offline testing system to test using and connecting with this technology to secure environments, right? They should be air-gapped. There should be no internet connectivity. I don't need to go to testers.ai and do it. I need to be able to run it all offline, and it needs to be connected into my production environments. I've got Citrix to do tunneling and all sorts of other stuff. You need to be able to test anything on any device, right? So computer use agents is a technology that allows to use something called A2A. A2A is what Google announced probably 3 or 4 weeks ago. A2A is agent-to-agent communication. So this supersedes model content protocol and makes it secure, encrypted communication between agents. Because if you think about this, you might say to me in 30 minutes when I get thrown out of the room, you might say, Jonathan, you know, you're saying all this stuff, but, you know, we're super secure, right? We're super regulated. We've got compliance. And it just sounds like you're talking about RPA. And RPA never got any traction, right? You go outside. I say I go outside. I'm looking at the window now. I see this sign called UiPath. What do UiPath do? No one look at the sign for a second. What do UiPath do? Anybody? RPA. Yeah. It's an RPA company, right? Did anyone watch the stock price when they went IPO? It went to the moon. Anyone watch the stock price recently? Let me bring it up. Actually, I'll get the demo to do. So we're going to go to browserbase.com and do it. And then I'm going to get another cease and desist from my friends at UiPath, which, by the way, I love the product. And we use the product at Keysight. So if I go to Browserbase, I'm going to type in, what is the what is the stock for UiPath since going IPO? By the way, no one's from UiPath, are they? Because I don't want to get punched on stage. So that isn't a test. I didn't write a test there. I didn't write something to say, you know, go and test my website. I literally just said to it, what's the stock for UiPath, right? Since IPO. And the reasoning engine now is going, okay, well, Google's a really good engine to go and find this information, but what's happened here? Well, the reasoning engine says Google is searching for it, but first you've got to collect this accept cookies button. Wow. not exactly rocket science, is it? But the reasoning engine's like, yeah, I can do that. I'm like a big boy now, right? No more nappies for me. Now it says, okay, I need to go and find this IPA stuff because I'm going to show you the graph, and the graph goes like this. And my CEO keeps on saying to me, we should be more UiPath. And I'm like, have you seen the stock? No thanks. But then you see a little bump in the last 12 months where it's doubled in value. It's like Elon saying to the moon, you know, with GameStop. Who bought GameStop shares? Nobody? No, just me then. So part of it is they've doubled their value. They're now a £2 billion company. Why? Do you know why? Because now it says they're an agentic AI company. If you go to the website, they don't even mention RPA, because RPA is gone. The days of robotic process automation to connect to your machine in your local machine never worked. It worked, but it never got traction. RPA was the biggest thing in the world until it wasn't. Now, computer use agents and agentic AI is the biggest thing, and it will double the price of your stock price overnight if you rebadge your company from an RPA company to an agentic AI platform. And I'm not saying everyone should do that to you. And yes, no, it's not Test Scouts. It's not going to be agentic Scouts, because I'm getting that domain.
Oh, we would keep testing.
But anyway, no one cares about this. But the whole point is, it's gone through, it's looked at it, it's pulled the financial results from macro trends, it's done all the activities that I expect it to do, and it's done that from me just asking it something. Not that exciting, but you know, you're saying to me, come on, Jonathan, we need to get even more excited than we were. But do you know how much browser base costs? And the answer is nothing, because it's just a free platform. So, of course, you can have that for free, and you can also, if you really want to, the source code's on the thing, you can just run that locally. So you don't need to be connected to the internet. You can run that offline in your secure environment, and it'll test, unfortunately, just web pages, which is why it's limited, right? However, if you want to go a little bit further, we'll talk about omniparsal AI. You don't need to care about this in a second. And we're not going to talk about UiTars yet, and we're not going to talk about Agentic. But I will go through and tell you about computer use agents, right? So if I quickly show the answer to your problem. Browser base is a web browser. OpenAI is a web browser. However, there's two really important things to know about this. Is the reason why Sam has spent all the last 2 years hiring every automation engineer in the Valley is because this was a publicity stunt. And it didn't do very well, but actually the deliverable is to Microsoft to be able to run computer use automation on any device, on any Windows device. So those ones who, no one's gonna put their hand up, but the ones who've got Copilot button on their keyboard, on their laptop, and they go to the shop and you go to Best Buy or wherever the nearest tech shop is, say, oh, can I have a Copilot plus laptop, please? What that means is the NPU on the device is designed for this to be ready to drive everything on it. So Copilot Plus is not a chat thing, which everyone thinks for someone raising its Copilot is chat or code generation. It's AI agentic capabilities, which is why the CEO last week turned around and said, you know, it's going to change the world. You don't need SaaS anymore. We're going to have agents. And so when you go into Copilot in Windows, if you've got a Windows machine, you click on it and say, Jonathan, or don't say Jonathan. We take this video recording, I'm not very good at video recording, and edit it and highlight the 3 most important topics Jonathan raised today in the 3 hours of you having to sit through it. And it would go off, it'd open up Adobe Premiere, it'd drive the video editing stuff, it'd cut the content, it'd then load another tool that is found to do the transcript, it'd then go off, it'd pull the information back, it'd do the processing, it then goes to Microsoft Graph, which I'll talk about in a bit, and it comes back and it will say, based on current trends, Jonathan said 3 things which were really important. The one thing he said was Anthropic and Claude computer use is the future. And then it would add a video off a demo it found of Claude computer use into the video thing, and then it'd make it into a 2-minute social media thing for LinkedIn. Now, I would watch this driving my screen, and it's all running a large language model, no large language model, it's a large action model and a large vision model are running side by side, which is what I'm going to show you next, to actually look at the screen and say, Jonathan doesn't have Adobe Premiere because he's too tight, his company's too tight to buy him an Adobe license. You can buy an Adobe license as a student, by the way, for $20. I'm not saying that I have a student license, but I use Camtasia, right? So instead, when it launches the Claude computer use, it sees Camtasia's on my machine, so it uses Camtasia to do the editing and the video output. So the point is, it doesn't care if you have nothing on your machine, it's got to install it. It's learning based on what it's doing. And so Claude computer use, I'm going to show you Claude first. Claude computer use, to your answer, is this, as you can probably see from the, you'll probably see in a second, for the local aspect of it, Anthropic, go away. It'll come up in a second. This is now connecting to your Ubuntu thing, pulling a workspace up, and it's doing the same technology you said. Unfortunately, it is still a browser because people just have a problem with using browsers. But it's actually a desktop. This is a desktop here. It could drive the whole desktop. It could drive anything else. It could, if you can connect to it, you can see it. It will go through and actually use the computer. And that's computer use agents. So if you can access it, it can drive it. Of course, my Thailand abilities are slightly limited, so I'm going to ignore that for a second. But you can see it was just about to save a file to a photo and then save it to desktop, which Selenium would have died and done something else. Right, so why did Sam make Operator, and why did we all get really upset about it last year? Well, what he's doing here, which I find really interesting actually, is it's looking at the JP Morgan's healthcare application, which he doesn't know, and it's going through and it's learning how to take the data from this proprietary application and do market analysis, right? So it's doing the thinking of how to actually go through as a trader and how to learn about things from just one prompt saying, okay, go off, try and solve this problem. And so Operator, just like I said, it's going to turn into Copilot Plus, is going to be able to solve problems on your own system with no internet connectivity, no firewalls, just go through and understand it, navigate it, learn the application, and actually come out with the thinking aspect to work out how to set the goal off, scraping financial information and then processing it. So this is why computer use agents are so important. However, let me go back to the glorious days of, as we've not got that much time. So, OmniParser. Again, it's on the memory stick. I wouldn't recommend trying to install it. It took me, as you can see, on my train a bit of time to download it. So this, just in case you haven't seen this before, this is a Snapdragon Elite X. It's about $3,000 for a Microsoft Surface device. This, I used to work with Qualcomm, but this has one of the most powerful NPUs you can get today at the moment, and it has a Copilot Plus button, and obviously it's ARM, which is why it's a bit more fundly to fiddle around with. But this can do, I think, 40 trillion operations a second through the NPU. So this is like passing it to a T100 CUDA card to get you going, which your Amazon bill is going to be huge, right? But I didn't bring that today. I unfortunately brought a Mac. Why did I bring a Mac? Does anyone actually know why I brought a Mac, right? Where is OmniParser? Oh my God, I've not actually launched it before. This is really bad. Actually, we haven't got time for me to start trying to use a computer again. Let's just see the demo. Doodle-doo, doodle-doo, doodle-doo. I was going to say, here's one I made earlier because, you know, you always have to be prepared for everything. So, here's one I made earlier. That's my other friend, Jonathan AI. So, my GPU, at the moment I'm using my 4070 still. What I've done is taken my Star East thing from last week, and I've dragged the image across, and as you can see, my GPU with the 12 gig of memory is going to suddenly explode, 4 gigs for the standard model, then it's going to load the vision model on top of it. And what it's doing is it's taking that image and it's identifying every single component on the screen. Now you're going to turn around to me in a second and go, Jonathan, you know, I've used YOLO before. Why are you, making such a big deal about this? And I'm making a big deal about it because this technology now isn't about recognition of screens, right? Our guys, back at 22 years ago, Eggplant created SenseTalk, and it used computer vision to recognize any device, which is the reason why we're in Cerner and everything else. Is it doesn't matter if it's a car, we talked about McLaren, a Lamborghini, whatever a device it is, fighter pilots, who tests the NASA space shuttle? Eggplant. They literally, we test the rovers, we test LiDAR, we test every single hard to test thing, right? But it's all based on vision. It's based on what you can see. Now, vision has always been pretty good, but now it's just got superpowers, because what you're seeing along here feels like you're saying to me, well, Jonathan, congratulations, it's recognized this little eggplant-like thing here. Numbers, it's not 69, it's 77, right? So part of it is, it's just vision, Jonathan. And you're like, well, that's fine. But what's really important is when this launches Omniparser, when it sees Eggplant, what it does is it says, I don't know what this application is. So it goes off with its reasoning engine, and it goes to docs.eggplant.com, and it transposes, like the NOP Commerce website, it transposes all of our formalized external facing documentation. And a bit like Neo, obviously everyone knows Neo, the guy's got the phone charger thing for it. Neo goes, unplugs and goes, I know keep Kung Fu, right? What happens next? Everyone's seen The Matrix, right? I'm gonna pick on you. What happens when he learns Kung Fu? You've seen the movie. It's you. Yeah, what happens next?
He spars with Trinity, they like do the Kung Fu together.
And who wins?
She does, right.
Why?
He doesn't have the experience.
Exactly, and that's the whole point, is he learns Kung Fu. He knows the exact same amount of Kung Fu as Morpheus and everyone else, but he gets his ass kicked. Because it's not about just knowledge, it's wisdom and our experience that you have to overlay on the top of it. So the fact that by looking at this screen, it now knows Kung Fu, it now knows Eggplant, it knows Visual Studio, it knows Visual Studio Code, it's read all of the documents, it's created, in essence, 60-odd graphs, which is what is called RARE, which is Retrieval Augmented Graph Modeling. It's gone off and created 60 different graphs, including Camtasia, and it knows how to go through Camtasia. So if I said to it now, edit this video, it's on the desktop, it's going to load 121 up, and then it's going to stick the model with the graph on how to use Camtasia into its memory, and it's then going to start hitting the computer use agent, because it knows what the next screen is. It doesn't have to look at the screen, it can see where it is, and it can fix itself because it now knows Kung Fu. So this is Omniparser, this is Microsoft, and this is just a taste of what's going to happen in the future, because you're, like we just said, it's like, how does it know my app? How does it know my healthcare app? Well, if it's inside your domain, it'll read all your code. Well, it'll read all your code and turn it into documentation, and then feed the documentation into the graph, and then learn your entire application estate. Because it's using this technology. Now, obviously you don't want it, you might not want it to read your code, probably not. But this is changing how we deal with technology. And so this is actually a customer, so please don't turn off the recording, I'm joking. So Vegas, we were talking about it last night. Unfortunately, spent too long in Vegas. So, the customer comes to me and says, oh, we've got this new Squid Games. Everyone's watched Squid Games, right? and hopefully Black Mirror. If you're going to do anything, watch the new Black Mirror series. So this Squid Games thing, they said this is a slot machine. So we have 6 directional robotic arms that pull down the pulley. We have high-speed computer vision that's looking at spinning at over 100 frames a second. And it's also got access to all the control and the payment and the payout interfaces. And it's able to test the games, test the logic, run them thousands of times, more than ever any one manual tester could get really bored of pulling the lever. It'll press the buttons, it'll do the whole thing, it'll press 2 buttons at the same time. It literally tries every combination for them before it goes out into Vegas, into the slots, right? And they do that for every game logic. So it learns Texas Hold'em, which I think you said you'd won $200 on, wasn't it? Well done. So, but it learns the logic of how to play Texas. It's like, Go. It's like AlphaGo. It's learning the rules of how to play Go. So this technology, this omniparser technology, is what we call a large vision model. Large vision models are essential. However, they're not the answer to the problem. The problem which we said we have the answer for, hopefully if I go into the right location. And so this is my laptop, by the way. This is me at the airport yesterday, the day before. Where did I fly in? Where did I fly in from? Oh, I don't know. Sometimes I don't know what country it is. But anyway, and then also Starbucks, which is very important. It's a part of every, I know they're not paying tax, but minus that, they've got a tiramisu thing at the moment. So that's also my takeaway from today. So, I am actually going to run this because I feel like I've not done enough live demos in my life and failed miserably. AutoGen is Microsoft's free tool, right? Free agentic framework. And so if you load it up, which you are going to load it up on your laptops at some point, hopefully when you get back, what you're going to realize is when you launch it, you can use OpenAI, you can use your Claude API key that you've just paid $20 for, you can use AWS Bedrock, whatever you want to use, right? I'm not going to, at the end of you, tell you off for what large language model you're going to use. Or, like the healthcare example we were just talking about, you can load your LM Studio on your laptop, and instead of deploying this into the scary internet world, which Bill Gates said no one was going to use, you can connect to a local model of whatever model you want. So if you've got a fine-tuned healthcare model, you just put the model in here, you load LM Studio, which is free, and then all you do, if you're really cool, is you press this button in the top right-hand corner and start the server. And if you start the server, it will now not use the internet. You can see it's all local if you were really that bothered about reading the stuff on the bottom. It runs everything locally on your machine, and it uses the large language models which are loaded on those pen drives, right? And you can pick whichever model you want. Now I'm going to show you this working in a way, because I feel like the last 5-10 minutes should be used in some useful way. So I can then ask it something quite vague, like we've just seen with the browser base and all the other ones, and it can run multiple agents. So out of the box, once you load this up, you'll see in the corner there's a gallery. And within the gallery, you can set up a number of agents. One that's a Jira agent, one's a project manager agent, one's a coding agent, one's a testing agent, one's a whatever agent you want. And then using your massive skills of drag and drop, which I'll show you what the drag and drop looks like for a second. No, I will launch it and I'll show you. But you pull up the various different agents you want and the flow you want to define. I know it's sounding a bit more like RPA, but that's just what it is. And these assistants and agents will talk to each other and communicate to solve the problem. So, I know I felt like I've just rushed the whole idea of agentic AI, but the way I explain it best, or I don't really explain it well anyway, is I think of it as like a hive and bees, right? And this is back to watching, you've watched the latest Black Mirror episode, haven't you, the first one? Come on. You'll watch it later, won't you? Anyway, they talk about bees. Now, I sat down with Paul, I've known Paul for a very long time, probably 20 odd years, and he's going to fascinated with his keynote next, so you don't have to deal with me all day long. But I spoke to him on Friday, and I said, oh yeah, I've got this idea of the hive when I'm trying to explain agentic AI. And he said, oh, bees have got 8K of memory. I was like, what? And so then I thought, he just sometimes Paul says things and you kind of just dismiss it. And then I went into all these research projects, a bit like the microwavable hamster, and bees are proven to have about 8K addressable space, which, in all fairness, is just agentic AI, because agentic AI has two core principles. One is long and short-term memory, and the agents have a short-term memory. They're based on, like you've been typing into ChatGPT, they're based on a thread, a moment in time. But they learn activities, and then they go back to the hive and show what they've done, the reasoning, the thinking they've done. So when they send the next bee out, it doesn't go to the same location and take some more pollen from the same area they've just taken it all from. They go to a new location because the hive coordinates the agents based on learning and thinking and reasoning itself. So based on the agents, they will, I'm not saying they're going to get smarter, they're not smarter, they're just bees, they're 8K bees, but the communal response of the hive, the success of the outcome of the survival of the hive, I'm not now going to go and say it's all about the queen, right? Is that the queen is there, but the hive success, and we all think of just honey, honey's just what you guys make in your company, right? Whether it's healthcare or whatever, it's the output. But how successful it is based on, I guess, the C-suite, the queen, the workers, the coordinators, the managers, all the people doing those activities in a day-to-day activity is an agentic model. It's designed around how workforces interact, very much like a hive. So when it goes off and tries to solve problems, you'll see, and people used to say, oh, well, it hallucinates. And you're like, well, no, it doesn't hallucinate, you're just not very good at prompt engineering, right? But it's not about hallucination. It will try things different ways because it's trying to learn how to do it. It's trying to learn to play Pokemon Go. Oh, not Pokemon Go, or Go, one of the two. So I'm going to show you this, and I'm actually going to do it with maybe the hardest thing in the world ever, because I feel like, well, when in Rome, you may as well just go for it with the last 3 minutes. So, not that all I'm doing is taking selfies of myself. 3 minutes to go. This is me, Monday, flying through Amsterdam. And so, what's this? This is, and this is where you can all cheat. I'm going to allow you to cheat. Where is this? Anybody? The whole point is no one's ever going to get it, right? It's not like it's a famous place. It is just somewhere on Google Maps. It could be literally here, right? We don't really know. But the guy with the smartphone is just going to put it straight into ChatGPT and say, where is this, right? And so always hide a slide, because if you don't hide a slide, people will shout at you. So, oh, here we go. You take a photo of it, ask ChatGPT, oh, where is it? And it'll tell you where it is. It's, in French, wherever it is, South America Space Center, right? What is that? What is 4.0 doing? Why don't we all just use ChatGPT? And the answer is, this isn't magic. This is the large vision model kicking in, looking at it, cross-referencing against millions of photos it's already been pre-trained on, and it will tell you where the location is, right? However, which is what I did with the actual demo, but I don't think we're going to run out of time, if I pass this image in to the hive and tell it to go and find this location, it will do the exact same thing. It won't use ChatGPT, thank God. It will go off and it will use Google's satellite images. It will go off and try and find this reference location. It takes about 10, 15 minutes, but it will go off and eventually to come back with the same answer. Now, I'm not saying, well, let's just all use ChatGPT, and I could partially argue if I press this button on my phone, the one that I load is, unfortunately, is ChatGPT. But I don't use it for that purpose. I use it for this purpose, which is taking a photo of an item and find it. But that's what Agentic can do. Because it's got vision models and it's got action models, it's able to drive research agents to go off and try and communicatively look for an image and then solve the problem. So I know it feels vague, and it feels like you're going, oh my God, Jonathan, what did we actually learn through that entire session? But what I hope you took from this today, and I just move back to the section. And obviously, you've got all these slides, so you can use them whenever you want. But I'll finish with in the top left-hand corner, just before UiPath renamed their product to Agentic Testing, which I know they will do because I spoke to them last week. Agentic Testing, and you saw on my TED talk that I could write on a whiteboard with think, test, learn, build, whatever, is when you say to me, Jonathan, you're allowed to have access to whiteboard pens. This is what I draw, which is why you won't let me draw in your office anymore, right? So I sat down with both Gartner, which is Joachim, and Diego. And Diego was there when I drew this. So I said, look, people will say, which they were an RPA company, now they're an Agentic company, but this is Agentic. In all fairness, UiPath have built something very similar to this, so give them credit where credit's due. But Agentic AI is not just agents, right? Agents are a big part of it, but actually what's really important, and we've done today, is the reasoning capability, they're rare, of using vision and action models, looking at the screen, evaluating the screen, and then deciding what action to take, whether it's a car, a space shuttle, or something else. It's about the idea of having this long and short-term memory, the collective hive Borg, I had to have one Star Trek thing for a second, resistance is futile, but also, which is why I'm spoiling it for everyone and the rest of their lives, is it's also about having the business context. So to your point, having healthcare information, and that data could come in two forms. It could come in structured forms or unstructured forms. And I like to think, when you talk about that 8KB, the reason why models are so important is that it's based on the memory context window you've got inside there, because you can't just load in every application. When you see it, you can't load every graph in and thingy, because like we talked about yesterday, is Bill Gates said no one needs more than 640K. He was right. 640K is about the sweet spot of leading information in. Anything over that is too much information for the model to process. So therefore, Microsoft Graph, which isn't a graph application, which I put there, Microsoft Graph on your laptop, sorry, it is your laptop, Microsoft Graph is already sending messages about what you're doing. So if you open up Fiddler or Wireshark or whatever you want to do, you'll see a GraphQL message coming from your machine to your local tenant's Microsoft Graph thing. What do you think it's doing? It's looking at what you're doing. It's looking at how you're working, what apps you're loading, what emails you're writing, how you write the emails, your transcripts, your attention to actually turning on the camera when you're in Teams meetings. It's doing that. Did you opt into that? No, neither did I. But they've been doing it for years. And it's to learn business context so that they can use Copilot plus Studio, which will show you exactly all the tasks you've been doing for the last 6 months, and it'll create a framework that shows you how you could automate those tasks. And as we spotted yesterday, is the danger of agents replacing 3% of the workforce and making 7,000 people redundant this week at Microsoft. They're saying it isn't AI, and I agree with them. But if 30% of the code is being written by serverless, agent-based, non-human in the loop coding with the technologies you've seen today, then what you're doing, what I'm doing, it's learning. It's not going to be too long before this fully functional Death Star with only one requirements traceability issue of a vent, which if you're a farmer on Tatooine, he's going to fire a rocket into a hole and blow the whole thing up because of the only good movie they made, which was Rogue One, which was What was the code name for the project where they put the back door in the Death Star? So I'm giving you all the hard ones.
Actually, I've seen that movie. But I don't
It's my favourite Star Wars movie. People always say, oh, you're a big Star Wars fan. What's your favourite movie? Rogue One. And they're like, what? What was that movie? Was that even... No, that's the 2.5. It's between the blowing up the Death Star and the rebels that died finding the Death Star plans, which was a Microsoft Graph version of the entire plan of the Death Star. and someone went, GraphQL, where is the vulnerability? Hit enter, and then it came back with ventilation port, which is why it was spinning around. They were like, wow, that took us like 30 seconds to find the vulnerability. Now we just need to find some farmers. But this is not only doing the business context and learning about what you're doing on your laptop, and now it's just like, I'm in incognito mode on my browser. I'm like, yeah, but it's an IP, it's a private IP. You need to get some VPN tunneling and some proxies. But industry context, all your health stuff, all the healthcare standards, all the Swedish healthcare standards, you need to feed all of those standards in to create domain-specific models that are just fine-tuned, which is what you said yesterday, fine-tuned just for you. So Volvo AI, when we do it next week, will be a fine-tuned version against all the trucks, all the standards, all the documentation that's ever been existing, and it will be able to answer what is the operating temperature of component X in Dubai while the weather's wet on this day, whilst a car comes out and the LiDAR detects a cat on the road, how does it respond? You'll be able to ask it that question and it'll come back with the answer. Now, what's the end goal of what we've just talked about? Is it 12 o'clock we're finishing? Is that why everyone's eating?
It's over.
It's over. What? We're finished. No, I don't believe. But this is agentic testing, right? And I hope today, I know I've talked to you a lot, but what I hope you've taken away from today is that using vibe testing, right? Using the principles we've talked about being able to generate code, and we were all going to go and use testers.ai, and thank you, Jason, for watching. And also, why is it so slow when it boots up? Anyway, we'll talk about it later. You can use testers.ai to generate all those tests, do all the automation. You didn't need to go to Marcel's session because we don't need Playwright. Where we're going, there's no roads. It's about 88 miles an hour, right? And agentic testing is telling you that this future is coming. It's going to take a bit of time, but this is coming. And yes, the prompt engineering stuff that we did at the start, you felt like you wasted a bit of your time, but actually it's going to be a component. It's how you talk to it. So the future language you need to do is neo-symbolic programming. Neo-symbolic programming?
That I have.
It's just English, right? So you just, or not English, it's Finnish. It's like, do something, and it just does it. That's how you need to talk to these systems. But you're the most important part of it because these are just bees. They need the queen. They need the people that are doing the coordinate stuff. So you're part of this future because you're Morpheus, right? You've got the wisdom to make sure you understand how this works in your world. And that's what I want you to take away from today, is that actually this future is with you all involved. And it isn't they're just going to replace you because they can see the tasks you can do. But if you keep on doing those tasks, they will replace you. You have to be using these tools and be ready to adopt how you talk and interact with these systems in the future. Because it's going to all change. It's going to change fast. And I need to tell Milana, go to university next week. She's got her exams. But you will need to bring all your wisdom to the table, and the future will be bright. And that's why my next talk will be about AI assurance, because that's the pivot. The pivot is these systems build, but you still need to test them all. You need to make sure the output's right. You don't want to be hit with a GDPR fine. You don't want to be hit with a European Union AI Act fine. But you're the ambassadors to make sure that these systems work in the way that need to be done. And in a way, testing quality will evolve into a new role which is governed by the power of AI. So embrace it, don't be scared of it, and go and have some lunch. And I hope that people took something from that. And if you feel free to take the memory sticks, if you had one on the table, whoever gets there first. And of course, all the links that I did were in that original Test Scouts workshop. So you can get all the files from there. It's not like you didn't get the memory stick, I'll do it. Okay? Go on.
And just before we leave and so on, first of all, give you a big applause to I guess that, we have some homework to do and some fixes for some of us. The GDPR stuff I will look into. The other things we already actually know because we are doing some testing of it. But yeah, I just want to show you 2 slides before we wrap up. So let's see if we can. 1 second.
Oh, you want
yeah,
to
we can
plug
take
it
it.
in.
Yeah. I need.
You need the dongle, don't you?
Yeah, I need one of those 100s. Let's see which one it is.
That's USB-C.
Yeah.
Shall I stick it in? Oh, no.
Stick it in. All right. Let's see if we get that.